Welcome everyone. It's Wizards on Earth. Yeah, sadly I don't think I'll be able to do Wizards in Space tomorrow because I've got some real life things going on. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. As you can see, I have changed things. I am now wearing a different head. And as you can see, my hair is blowing in the breeze like I'm some sort of supermodel. Ha, because it's very warm in here. Wiz has been MIA for like a month. Yes, we had, I think the last 2 weeks or something, someone couldn't make it, so we skipped, and unfortunately this weekend I can't either. So I asked them if any of them are free during the week, but we'll get it going again. So, welcome, everyone. World War III has often been the topic of conversation for our streams in the last few years, but perhaps no time more than now. Let's look at some memes first. Frankly, I think that's the best thing to do on the eve of World War III. Iran media publishes the dispatch of a Mossad agent in this manner. That appears to be a man tied to a rocket with an Iranian flag on it. Now, I assume that this is not entirely real, but it's very funny. Let's have a look, shall we? Iran Mossad rocket. Nothing about it so far. Iran Mossad. Iran strapped Mossad agent to a rocket. Yeah, I don't think it's true. Is Iran? Okay, there we go. Is Iran tying Mossad agents to missiles banned for Israel? That's very useful. Iran executes Mossad spies from times of India, so it's almost certainly fake or low quality, so this is not it. Is Iran tying Mossad agents to missiles bound for Israel? This image, chat, is, I think perhaps you would join me in assuming not real. What do we reckon? Do we reckon fake? It's weird, isn't it? It's only about 5 or 6 years ago when you'd see an image like this and think, that's weird. It doesn't look photorealistic. It's got the feel of photorealism, but it's not actually photorealistic. But it also doesn't look CGI. It'd have to be very good CGI to feel this photorealistic, even though there's inconsistent shapes. I wonder how this was rendered. And now it's just completely normal that it's AI. In like 5 or 6 years, it's gone from 0 to 100. It's very impressive. Wolf says, I choose to believe it. We have today Cybersmith2 in the chat. Congratulations, Wolf. Shows the blue. Why the wheels, says Spug? Yeah, I don't know. And why is he tied to a chair and not the rocket? I don't know. Yeah, so I believe it's fake, but the way they've done this original image is quite good, quite clever, because it looks like they've got, probably it was either AI or perhaps CGI rendered, and then they added the blur to make it look like it was a screenshot from like a candid, phone video of someone that's not supposed to be there, but they got the shot. And then they've added some more layers of bullshit, like the mouse cursor and the black text or whatever, and the hand, but the hand is also blurred, which I don't think you'd get unless you're taking a photograph of a screen where you're also blurring the movement of the phone. So, but like third world countries, this is how these things happen, and also boomers. But yes, I don't believe it's actually true, but it's quite funny. And then obviously the Trump tweet part of it is fake. It says, well, this is some wily coyote shit. The Iranian army strapped a Mossad spy to a rocket. Yeah, I don't think so. Bug says that would mess up the guidance. I don't think that's their primary concern. Not that this is real, but if it was real, I don't think that's their primary concern. Anyway, next meme. Americans were asked to point to Iran on a map. And 2 of them pointed to the UK. About 20 of them pointed to Australia. 1 pointed to Japan. About 20 pointed to Russia. A couple pointed to or near Madagascar. And about 10 pointed in the middle of the ocean. Actually, more than 10. Maybe about 25 pointed in the middle of the ocean. But 23% got it correct. Iran's a suburb of London. Well, none of the dots in the UK are actually on London. One of them's on, like, Bath, or maybe in Hampshire, and then one of them's in, what is that? It's like Clacton, Nigel's constituency. There are 6 on France, so more Americans think France is Iran than the UK. Congratulations, fellow Brits, we are winning. There's a lot of them on China, a lot of them on India. Do any Americans here actually know where Iran is? Without looking at the map, obviously, that would be cheating. Question, what percentage point is to Israel? It's actually a little hard to tell. But I think Israel's about here, right? In the middle here. So like 15, maybe? I don't know about the percentage, but a lot. Legit case for the US doing a regime change in the UK. I wonder if the UK would be the primary place to look for that, given that politically we do have a very potent alternative, though other European nations have had that, still never quite as potent as here. And by potent, I mean high in the polls. I'm not making a commentary on how good they are. I know you guys have your criticisms to make. Achilles says, I expect a lot of meme answers in this thing. Possibly. But then you'd think one of them would have actually pointed to London. Hey, perhaps the one where they pointed up here, like north of London, perhaps that was them aiming for London. Interestingly, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and a few of the eastern countries, as well as Portugal and arguably Spain, have completely avoided being pointed at. It's rather interesting. I wonder if... Oh no, quite a few people pointed to Chad. I love just the random guesses on Africa. Anyway, next up. Hey chat, am I cooked? Chat, is this me? Is this literally me? Pix and Helen, I don't know. Is this literally me? Moch, is it notable how often I talk to chat when I'm not streaming?
I think you talked to chat in a room by yourself before, yeah?
I resemble this remark. Odysseus says it's a lot of people. Frankly, I don't view this as a bad thing. I think this is just a new way of, a new mode of speech that's pretty much harmless. Streamer-induced schizophrenia, yeah. What is this? All right, JDev. So he also does pornographic material. Let's move on. But wait, that hyena is not radioactive. Yeah, that is pretty weird. Thanks, JDev. Really appreciate that. All right, next meme. It's Men's Mental Health Month. Make sure you keep that shit bottled up, boys. It'll just get used against you at a later date. True. True. Beware. Beware of people who give the appearance of genuine sympathy. Because they're just trying to get ammunition. It still baffles me when new people come into Cabal and they spend the first half an hour just explaining everything that's wrong with them. No, Mon. Who's not here currently, but he came in and he made it. This doesn't actually resemble the remark exactly, but he came in and he made it quite clear that he thought that not homosexual, but gay meant liking penis for either gender. Yeah, exactly, Ron. I think it is that, but that's what he thought. And he said, well, you have to have a word for someone that's an androphile, someone that likes male sexuality, that's not so clinical as androphile, but is insulting. And so he said, well, that's what gay is for, which is not what gay means. So I made the argument, well, how about cocksucker? And he's like, oh, yeah. So I solved this problem. As it turns out, the solution to his problem was cocksucking. So yeah, that's Nomon. Cybersmith wears, it's a long list, someone works. Yeah, don't forget Jack as well. It wasn't as soon as he entered the server, but just came out and told us, yep, foot fetish, as well as other things too. But yeah, I think Ronald maybe onto something there with the Twitter mental illness bio, and also Harry as well, and fucking like the bronies as well. There is becoming a little bit of a contingent of bronies in the server now. It was Spirit and one or two others. I think quite a lot of bullying is required. Can we ban them as a kiddies? You can do worse than that. You can shame them. Yeah, Daka. How difficult is it not to list all your fetishes directly to the entire public? For most people, it's not too difficult. For Cybersmith, it is impossible. Ghost says, fortunately, I'm very normal and have nothing wrong with me to explain to you all. Yeah, go ahead and put a doubt react on that, chat. If you wouldn't mind, I appreciate that. Thank you, chat. Right, next meme. This is almost our thumbnail for today. At least half of it was. Is this what's actually happening? Am I reading this meme correctly? Is Iran launching a missile into Iran? Is that the path of the missile? Did they just launch it from a silo in the city and it just landed a few hundred meters away in the same city? Ronald says he doesn't have any mental illnesses at birth. Ronald, you're Scottish. 07's in chat for the last handful of operational F-14s, says Darker. What? Was that Iranian ones? The videos where they're launching a missile and it slows and seems to sit still and then they freak out and run because it's coming right back at them. I mean, that is how missiles work in real life. As far as the educational broadcasts have informed me from Roadrunner. Alcoholism and mental illness is a status buff. It's a sort of stat alterer. It's got pluses and minuses, I think. See, I don't know much about the fighter, but luckily we have Daka here, our resident expert on plane autism. A video of a Russian AA missile doing the same thing early in the Ukraine war. Fun. All right, next meme. Wow. 2,780-year-old Israelite tablet finally translated to reveal its message. Persia is only weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon. Yeah. The notion has been ongoing for rather a while, hasn't it? Now, I would guess that near the beginning it might have been either bullshit or entirely the product of Russia trying to found a nuclear ally. But eventually it's got to the point where it's quite believable that they and other countries would have the tech required to actually build nuclear weapons themselves. Which is a bit of a problem. Now, Ronald and I talked about this briefly before the stream. He expressed the opinion that it wouldn't really matter that much if they had nukes, like Pakistan does, and that's fair enough. You may be correct about that. I would say the fewer the merrier, and also I think Israel is, yeah, quite religiously insane, but they're not religiously insane and stupid. They're smart enough to be devious, but they're not stupid enough to actually just use them in anger. I have a feeling Iran is. Now, I don't know, maybe that's just the image they want to put across. It makes you more unpredictable, more chaotic, more dangerous, more feared in a mad scenario. But I don't know. I feel like Iran is probably the worst of the countries that currently have nukes or are just about to have nukes to have them. Ronald says that's the US Israeli propaganda image, to be honest. I don't think it's just that. NK has them. If North Korea has them, it's almost certainly because we can't stop it because it's a Chinese outcropping. And it's not good that North Korea has them, for sure. They shouldn't either. Iranians are not Arabs. I know, but they are Muslims. Genetics are a component of a nation's direction, but they're not the only thing. Yes, I agree with that, Ronald, but they're also pretty radically Muslim. And I would put faith in Judaism not to be overtly militarily violent before I would Islam. Not saying Judaism wouldn't, not saying it's peaceful, but Islam is more violent. So, I'm not saying it's a huge difference here, Ronald, but I would rather Israel had them than Iran. That's here in Gaza. Yeah, well, that's not quite the same scale. And again, I'm not even talking about conventional warfare here. It might be that Israel's more likely to do that than Iran is. But specifically nukes. The Jews did start this one. That's true, Ronald. Yeah. Sorry about that, chat. A potential guest for today is unfortunately too EP to join us, but perhaps another day. Yeah, indeed, Daka. A preemptive defensive war, quite. It wasn't die, actually, although, join us. Join us. Maybe I'll tell her that Ronald has decided that he doesn't want to genocide the white race and see what she says. Someone of us is trying to lure Die in. They're talking mad shit behind your back. Well, yeah, we are talking about mutually assured destruction shit. Although it's not technically behind her back. We're a long way away from where she is. But anyway, let's go to some news, because that is the end of our memes for today. Okay, so was there something I was going to mention from this? I don't think so. Let's just continue. All right, so let's go from the start. Now, today, we have, if we run out of stuff to talk about, we have this Giga video. It's an hour and, 2 hours long of Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson arguing with each other. And I think this could be quite funny. Someone says it's a fucking mess. Someone says too, preemptively. So, chat, press 1 for us to focus more on this content in today's stream and do the other stuff as a secondary feature. And press 2 to focus on the other various news stories I have primarily, and to do this if we run out of stuff to talk about or if we feel like doing it at the end of the show. So 1 to focus on this video, and 2 to focus on other things, but possibly watch some of this video after. Ghost says I would like to vote on whatever irritates people more. It looks like more of you are saying 1 currently. Everyone is farming this interview hardcore, says Achilles. Yes, but I don't really care what everyone else is doing. This is Cabal. We always do things our own way. So I will give it a watch, I expect. Spooner says, I hear Ted Cruz totally flood this interview. I hear they both did, which is quite interesting. More of you are saying 1. So we will watch this. We'll focus on this primarily, but we will get to other things too. The reason this is so important is because it exposes the Israel-US government connection and the dishonesty. It doesn't just, that doesn't need exposing. It's already obvious. Ted came out completely wrecked, says Achilles. I have heard some quotes from Tucker that sound a bit silly. There was one we watched before the stream, actually, where, I've generally found Tucker to be on the ball every single time. But I did hear some quotes from this one which were a little off. But we'll see. Honestly, Daka, printing money causes inflation, which doesn't benefit people that pay taxes. So yeah. Yeah, good question. Like, it should be either or, really. But whatever. Ted gets picked up by Perry. Yes. Yeah, I suppose it does. Total, what would it be? Total something death. What would E be? Total e-girl death. Good thing there's no e-girls here, right? Oh no, total Ewok death. What is this, Imperial propaganda? All right. So, total E-warp death, maybe, yeah. So have a look at the chat, because I think having more people on for this would be fun. It would aid the chaos. And would any of the regulars who come on before like to hop on and do this with us? Did Rogel just leave? I was about to invite him on. Bitch. Whatever. All right, Quattro, I appreciate it. I might bring you on. Right. Well, I'll watch a little bit on my own, I think, first, and then I'll bring someone on. So, let's get Tucker and Cruz's opinion.
Senator, thank you very much for spending the time to have this conversation.
It's good to be with you.
So you've come out for regime change in
Does Tucker have a cold sore on his upper lip? That's going to be distracting me the entire thing.
Iran, as distinct just from taking out the nuclear sites. What does regime change look like in Iran?
Somebody else in charge.
How do you get there?
Look, that ultimately has to be a popular uprising from the people. And it's not a complicated question. Is America better off with a country that has a leader who hates us and wants to kill us, or to have a country with a leader who likes us and wants to be friends with us? And
definitely the latter's better.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so that's not a complicated statement. Look, I believe you look across the world at when you have countries that have dictators that are viciously anti-America. Venezuela, Maduro hates us. Would we be better off with Maduro out of power? Absolutely. I want our enemies out of power, and I want our friends in power.
I could not agree more. The question is, how do you get there?
Of course.
And we've been trying to kill Maduro for quite some time. We have troops there, as you know.
I don't know that we've been trying to kill Maduro.
We have. And I think you know that. And
I'm not sure I like the tone. Even if Tucker's right, you're talking to a senator, and Ted Cruz is fairly well respected, Tucker. Don't just go in with the tone of, oh, I know more than you. Like, he may well be he's not just a senator, he's been a senator for a while. He may be privy to confidential information you don't know. And again, he's kind of halfway between MAGA and Rhino. But he made a big show of being pro-MAGA when the moment came. And I suspect that his Rhino roots are really just what he needed to do to succeed. I suspect he's not quite that bad, in fact. I mean, he got the beard after Trump won. So, I mean, that's all the evidence I need. Someone says Tucker has CIA connections. Well, I'm sure he has connections, but you can never quite be sure who you can trust. At least with Ted Cruz, he's part of the establishment, in at least some sense. So I'm not saying that Tucker's wrong, even. He just shouldn't be so, hand-wavingly dismissive. It kind of sets the tone for the entire show. And by the way, Spooner, yeah, I did say earlier that there is a fan. It's one of my many fans, I think you'll find. But yeah, Margaret Ted went back to the mirror universe. Did he, Daka? That's a shame.
I don't know that.
Okay, well, as a statement of fact, we have. So
we do have massive sanctions. We tried to pressure him out of office.
Yeah,
I'm
there's all
not,
kinds
not
of
aware
stuff.
of efforts.
I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure coming from various parts of the U.S. government on that government, and it's still there.
Yeah.
Same, the country of your ancestors, Cuba, 1959, we've been working on that. Hasn't worked. So it's I think we both agree it's hard to do.
It absolutely is hard. And look, I think you're reasonable to ask, how do we produce that? And I think there's a distinction between what your objective is and the means to get it. There are all sorts of things I would say we would be better off. We'd be better off in China without Xi there. Should we invade China and topple Xi? Of course not.
Better off with no national debt.
There are lots of things.
Totally.
But it's good to say, all right, what are our objectives?
Right.
And so with the Ayatollah in Iran, saying you're for regime change, I don't view as complicated. I mean, the guy literally leads mobs chanting death to America. Mm-hmm. So that's not good.
Definitely not good. But
I don't know what he gains from that. I guess it's just America's easy to hate. I'm not saying that's entirely wrong, by the way, but America's easy to hate. And so in order to maintain his power, it's just, here's an enemy, get the people to hate them more than they hate you as the leader. Yeah, exactly, Sonderbox. Should we invade China and topple Xi? Yes, says Ezra. Well, that's the weird thing with China is, unless we've underestimated the situation or misunderstood something, all you've got to do is get one missile to one dam, and you've basically won. The only reason, as I understand it, that would be a bad idea is economic entanglement with China. Maybe the issue is that if you do that, they will just nuke you. I guess the objective is for the dam to just collapse on its own. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But then, of course, if that happens, if that dam collapses on its own, they might just nuke the US anyway, just on the assumption that, well, maybe it was the US. I guess that's, if Trump builds the Golden Dome, that could cause a massive unrest for China, because their like lifeline guarantee of will nuke you if this happens is gone. Well, there's already nuclear defense capabilities in the US. The Golden Dome won't be 100%, but it'll be close enough that they might think, okay, that's no longer enough of a deterrent. The US has no reason not to just send a very intelligent man with a suitcase there and blow the whole thing up. That's a bit of a worry. Whole thing is, though. Yeah, indeed, Daka. Moose says, give me 12 pickaxes and some crackheads and I'll make it look like an accident. Exactly. But that's the thing. Like, even if the Chinese can't prove it is, they probably would just assume it is, even if it literally is wear and tear. Maybe they do an investigation, but maybe they just launch the nukes anyway. I mean, once the regime is losing a third of its population and 80% of its industrial capacity, China's gone anyway. They're not going to be able to use the nukes a few years hence because their entire economy will topple. So they might as well use them immediately. Like, the people in charge are forfeit at that point. They're not going to care. The French flag at the scene. No, that's too close to the UK. They might miss.
But the reason I think it's important to get a little more detailed about how that might happen is because there's military action in progress, which we're supporting. And the president has said clearly, including last night, that he is focused on eliminating the capacity of the Iranian government to produce nuclear weapons. You are saying we need to use military force to effect regime change.
I have not said that.
Oh, I must have.
No, I have not said that once.
Okay.
I don't think we need to use military force to do regime change. I said I support it. I would like to see it happen. You asked me how should it happen? A popular uprising. What I've advocated for. All right, let's step back a second.
As I understand it, and I may be wrong, but from what I've heard, the situation in Iran is that a popular uprising is not actually that far-fetched an idea. Little tungsten rod. Unfortunately, tungsten rods are really inaccurate. You'd be better off with just an ICBM, I think. But yeah, as I understand it, the Iranian people are not particularly happy. There's a lot of unrest. Yeah, I know, it is funny. And one tungsten rod would do it as well, probably, if it was from orbit. Yeah, maybe someone in the chat knows more about the political situation in Iran, if it is relatively close to a popular uprising, because I had heard it was. I'm very willing to hear out Ted Cruz on this, though, because I suspect that he is going to be telling the truth for the most part. Obviously, he's going to have the sort of boomer warhawk mentality to some extent, and other boomer mentalities, and obviously the pro-Israel stuff I'm not particularly happy with. But I suspect there's going to be some insight here that is worth at least hearing out.
You and I, we've known each other a long time. I would say we agree on about 80% of the things on Earth.
For sure.
And there are a lot of things, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of foreign policy as much as you want. There are a lot of things on which you and I agree, not just a little bit, but violently.
I totally agree. I was rooting for you in your last campaign, for sure.
Well, thank you. Look, you have been heroic on the border. You've been one of the clearest and best voices in the whole country on securing the border and on the absolute crisis we're facing. And in Texas, I see it and live it every day. In COVID, in fact, you may recall in the middle of the COVID lockdown, I was out walking my dog when the whole world was shut down and we were living in lunatic times. And I called you and said, Tucker, your nightly monologues are the single best thing on television. Like I watch them like an injection of crack. Okay, I'm mixing my metaphor because you don't inject crack, but you get what I'm saying.
Try.
No, I mean, it was...
Interview is weird so far. Are we on board with the interview is weird so far, chat? Are we gorge posting in order to stave off how weird the interview is? All right, I think I need someone to inject crack with for this interview. Quattro, have you got your meth spoon ready? Speech rolls all over the place. Yeah, chat. Can you do some speech rolls for them? Just do /roll 1d20 and see what kind of results come up. Crack injectors at the ready. All right. Welcome, Quattro.
Affix crack injectors.
All All right. Let me stream to you.
Thank you very much.
There we go. Right. Let's see if we can get through some more of this, shall we?
You were standing up and speaking like, what the hell are we doing, in a way that we desperately, desperately needed. And so whether it's securing the border, whether it's the insanity of COVID lockdowns.
Okay, but Ted, what's the point you're getting to here? Like, I know that politicians do this sometimes. They just divert off onto like a big circle, which you think it's going to circle back to the point, but then it doesn't. It trails off to something else. And I think sometimes that's not deliberate. Often it is. But Ted here, I get the impression from his tone that he doesn't mean to distract from the point. He's just trying to wrap it up properly and sort of reframe to something more useful, genuinely. But he's trailing off. He's in a rather big circle here, and I'm wondering if it's ever going to come back.
So here's the thing with politicians. They are physically incapable of getting to the actual point. That is a medical condition that they get once they are diagnosed with politician.
Diagnosed with politician, indeed. Well, let's keep going.
And the vaccine mandates, whether it is the Second Amendment or the First Amendment, you and I agree on a ton of stuff. The 20% where we disagree, I do think is meaningful. And it's mostly in the foreign policy space. And what I would say...
What would you say, Ted? Because you're taking a long time to say it.
If you'll allow me to get a little theoretical, and then I'm happy to get specific.
Yes.
For a long time, people have perceived two different poles of Republican foreign policy. There have been interventionists, and those have been people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham and George W. Bush. And there have been isolationists. And the most prominent of those have been Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and there are others. And people perceive those are the two choices. You got to be one or the other. I've always thought both were wrong. I don't agree with either one. The way I view my own foreign policy...
I'm with you, by the way, for whatever it's worth. I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I don't know who set up that binary, but there are lots of choices, actually.
I mean, people sort of naturally fall into... I think they want to classify people, and they're like, okay, you're one or the other, and you got to be all or nothing. And
the easiest way to understand something initially is to box it into two categories. But you've got to go further than that, obviously.
And... The interventionists, it seems, have never seen a country they didn't want to invade, and that doesn't make any sense to me. And the isolationists, I think, don't take the threats to America seriously, and I think that's naive and it doesn't work. And so my view, I consider myself...
A lot of you in chat, I think, are much more on the isolationist end of this dichotomy, and I am on that end as well, compared to the center, but I will try to persuade you that unfortunately, like, America is the country that has the most leeway to be isolationist in the world, but it's still not absolute. I'm not even saying that, like, all of the interventionist shit that's happened in the last, X years, name a number, years, has gone badly, has been inadvisable. At least on the surface, the idea of soft power is real. The question is it worth the soft power? Often it's not. And often the quote unquote soft power is actually just power for specifically the individual politicians who implemented it. Now that's obviously wrong, but a country can't survive by completely isolating itself.
Well, yeah, the thing is, you play ball or you fuck around and you find out. The problem is they haven't been doing the whole finding out part. They've just been doing the fuck around.
You mean the US or other countries?
The other countries aren't finding out, and that's the problem. We need to turn that sand into glass, you see.
I don't know. I think the correct answer is minimal application of force, maximum output of results that are good, not only for you, but more so just for the stability of the world economy, which ultimately benefits the country that has the most merit, which is the US and its allies. So that's what intervention should be used for. It needs to be used by intelligent people and sparingly. That's the trouble, because that's the correct answer. But in terms of what do we want politicians to do, this, I think, is why so many of us are more isolationist, because you don't fucking trust the politicians to do that anywhere near properly. And in fact, as it turns out, other nations have, though they have a lot less power than the US, they have been a lot more, shall we say, shrewd in their dealings. In many cases, on the chessboard, as it were. Used to hear quite often about little sort of skirmishes, more diplomatic skirmishes that Russia and China had won against the US, and that just kept happening. And at some point, Russia, China, Israel, more so the latter two, just owned the politicians, and that was it. So some sort of larger scale solution to that is difficult. But my point is that if you had competent politicians, the correct answer would not be isolationism. It would be somewhere closer to the middle.
Just remember, there's no such thing as an honest politician.
There certainly isn't now. And the thing is, there probably is never going to be, because politicians learn things on the job that it's not safe to tell the public, but they have to act upon them.
But not just that, they are incentivized to lie.
Yes, by the force of public opinion. But if you have an active and competitive political market, then if they're discovered to be lying, then they're likely to lose their position next time. And I'm not talking about a market which is a duopoly, talking about genuine competition.
Well, see, if they gatekeep all the potential competition out, then it's no longer a problem.
Well, exactly.
Until they inevitably get overthrown, but they don't see that far ahead because they're politicians and they lack foresight.
That does, of course, gradually happen. Yeah. That does, of course, gradually happen. Entropy, like in anything. But my point is that the correct state is one in which this it does work. Just haven't seen it in a long time. Prosecute all competition out from the grassroots, like in Belgium and Britain. Yeah. Almost Germany too. Yeah. I mean, that can't go on forever, though. They're just buying themselves time. The only thing that can happen there is either the nation collapses or it restores, sanity. And unfortunately, the former is a distinct possibility for most Western countries, but I currently don't see it going that way. I see it recovering. Anyway,
maybe hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, some more hopeful than others, sadly. So, where was I? Yeah, if you had politicians that were even halfway capable, intervention is actually the smarter play. But you don't, unfortunately, at the moment. That might change.
A third point on the triangle. And what I describe that as is that I am a non-interventionist hawk, which sounds a little weird, but what do I mean by that? I mean the central touch point for U.S. foreign policy and for any question of military intervention should be the vital national security interest of the United States. How does this make America safer? How does this protect Americans? If it does, we should be strong. And actually, another way of conceiving what I'm saying, I'm speaking theoretically, but Reagan referred to it as peace through strength. And actually, I think Donald Trump's foreign policy is very much what I'm describing, a non-interventionist hawk, where he understands that, and I think this is historically true, the best way to avoid war is being strong. That weakness and isolationism, I think, encourages war. So going back to...
I do think that...
that's global homocopium.
It's used for global homocopium, but the truth of it is not that it's not true at all. The truth of it is that it's less than that. But I do think there's a lot of truth to that, unfortunately. What was I going to say? I forgot. I'm going to go back a sec.
Encourages war. So,
yeah, I said before that I think the two biggest factors that prevent war are, one, economic interdependence, and two, nukes. In that order. So isolationism would tend towards encouraging war. I think I probably wouldn't agree to the extent that Ted Cruz is saying it, But he hasn't said anything categorically wrong yet, I don't think.
Going back to regime change, where you started in Iran.
So just to make, I don't think I disagree with anything you've said. So we may not be that far apart, really, because you said that the single criterion for making decisions about America's foreign policy is America's national interest.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. Which is also America first. That's
well, Ronald, I don't know how isolationist Swiss policy is. I know that they're neutral, but that's not quite the same as isolationist. However, if it is, fair enough. However, Switzerland is very small. It's not that big a player on the world stage. It's not Russia or China. Now, the isolationist thing that he's talking about here doesn't necessarily apply to every country. Monaco, Luxembourg. It doesn't really matter for world security what they do. But there are some countries that are a little bit bigger, namely the USA, Russia, China, a few others, for whom it does actually matter what they do for international security. So there are other factors beyond just isolationism, but I do think too much isolationism would tend towards encouraging war to some extent. If for no other reason than there's less interdependence.
Isolationist and just stopped exporting themselves everywhere, I think we'd all be better off.
Probably. Now, I do generally agree with isolationism when it comes to problems that are nothing to do with the US. And I think this war, Israel-Iran, I have not yet seen any convincing reason that the US should be involved. I've been somewhat pleasantly surprised that the UK does not appear to be getting involved as well. So there's something from that. Well, maybe that'll change, but so far they haven't. I haven't seen any reason for the US to get involved. But maybe Ted will provide it. Probably not.
It's another way of putting that as well.
I think it's the definition of it.
Yeah.
The question is, are we watching that now?
So I think we are. And from what you've said publicly, I think on Iran in particular, you and I disagree. And all right, let me contrast it when Obama was president. When Obama was president, you remember he talked about wanting to have military action against Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I tried to keep an open mind to it. I said, okay, let me listen to the commander-in-chief, describe to me how this is in America's interest and what your plan is. And Bashar Assad was a bad guy. He was killing his own citizens, and he had chemical weapons that were very dangerous. I could conceive of a commander-in-chief laying out a plan for, okay, we're going to go in and say, grab the chemical weapons and leave. Like I could see that if there was a real threat to America and there was a plan to prevent that, I could see supporting that. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. And I listened both in classified briefings and public questioning. And number one, their public defense of it was incoherent. So John Kerry said, we're going to engage in an unbelievably small strike. I think that's a quote. I'm like, okay, and to do what? At the time, there were 9 major rebel Islamic groups in Syria. I'm like, okay, I agree. Bashar Assad's a bad guy. You topple him. And one of the 9 other groups takes over. 7 of them were affiliated with radical Islamic terrorism. You had Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. I'm like, wait, how is it better to have lunatics who hate us in charge? Assad's a bad guy, but I don't want worse guys in charge. Obama administration couldn't give an answer to that. And ultimately, when you press them, John Kerry in particular, I pressed, and he would say, well, we need to defend international norms. Like, what the hell's an international norm? I don't know what it is, but I'm not interested in putting U.S. servicemen and women in harm's way to defend one.
Amen.
So I opposed the Syria attack and opposed it vocally. And it was interesting. Rand and I agreed. Rand's a friend of mine, but we agreed with that position for different reasons. What I was asking is I think the question we should ask, how does this make America safer? The Obama administration couldn't give me an answer, so I opposed it. I think Iran is very different.
Let me ask what you think of how Syria wound up, because Bashar al-Assad now lives in Moscow.
Yeah.
He was taken out by our allies, and he's been replaced by a radical Islamist who was affiliated with ISIS. So is that a win or no?
Unclear. Look, Syria's a mess, so I've consistently opposed.
But we had a secular leader in a religious and ethnically diverse country. Now we have a religious extremist, Islamic religious extremist, who's overseen the purge of Christians and Alawites. Is that?
I did get the impression during the whole Assad thing that there was no sensible reason to topple him. Like, obviously, yeah, he's not a good guy, but the alternatives are all worse, and he's at least maintaining stability. I'm sure that many people in Syria didn't want him there, but would they have been happier with radicals? And if they would, do I care about their opinion? The number of people that were in Syria that wanted him toppled and didn't want radicals in power, I'm sure, was there, but what was their plan? Assad apologist. Yeah, well. I mean, maybe that's just what Arabs need. Half joking. Russia asset was the argument. Yeah, well, I don't care if he's a Russian. Fucking how many countries would American politicians admit like Americans helped to topple, Americans helped to install a new leader. Yeah, we helped run democracy in Ukraine. Yeah, I'm sure it was very, very legitimate. Yeah, no, I know you don't agree with it, Rob.
You know what else is a Russian asset? Vodka. We need to ban it. Oh, wait, that didn't go very well the last time we tried that.
Yeah. So
prohibition. Look, I'm going to give you all a great piece of advice. Don't listen to what women have to say on politics ever. Great rule for life.
What's your opinion on that?
Honey, they're asking for your opinion on what I just said. I don't know if you caught that.
No, we didn't hear it.
She says her opinion's whatever mine is. She doesn't give a fuck.
Well, I'm not listening to that, which means I can't listen to your opinion because she's a woman and you just told me not to.
Well, you see, women, as Shoe on Head has proved multiple times over the years, that they absorb politics vaginally.
One way of putting it.
It's just true.
Mm.
In fact, you can even say it's true.
Mm-hmm. Daka says the Arab states only have two forms of government. One, secular dictatorship that spends 99% of its time putting Islamists in the ground. Two, Islamic theocracy that spends 99% of its time killing basically random people. Yeah. True. True. Yes.
Indeed.
Also true. So yeah, I think Assad was probably the best choice for Syria of the ones available. Much like Trump's best choice for the US of the ones available, much like Farage is the best choice for the UK of the ones available. If there's others available, I will certainly change that opinion.
Better.
I mean, it's not exactly like there's a high bar.
Not exactly. What is a high bar? Sorry?
It's not like there's a high bar for what is a good choice.
Sort of. But yeah, higher than we've had.
One of the things you said is you said he was taken out by our allies. I don't think that's right. Israel didn't take Assad out. What happened, and I'll tell you.
What about Turkey?
Turkey didn't take him out. So it was interesting. I had a long...
How did Assad get kicked out? Yeah.
When Netanyahu was in D.C.
Tucker does have a few like vocal mannerisms that make me think he's fucking insane for a few seconds. The sudden like high-pitched yelling and the weird soft-spoken sort of half-toned sentences. Don't know why he does that. I think he's trying to be friendly.
And the hamster stare. Don't forget that.
Well, that's just his signature. You can't not have the look. The look that makes it seem like even if the other person is saying something completely reasonable, he's just flabbergasted that these words could even be spoken in this order.
He's got the beaky brain.
Yeah. I wonder if he's a big fister. Ronald says it's coke. I guess Ted had no idea how accurate his statement was. He was a news presenter, bro, is fucking wired on Coke 24/7, maybe. But doesn't explain how he's right so often, though. Like, Carlson has been pretty reliable.
A couple of months ago, he and I sat down for a couple of hours. He's a good friend of mine. And we talked actually about Syria. He made an interesting point that I've not heard anywhere else, in that he said he believes what toppled Assad was when Israel took out Nasrallah. Nasrallah was the head of Hezbollah, and they took him out. And he made an interesting point. He said it's fascinating how a charismatic leader, and Bibi said, look, Nasrallah was a very effective terrorist leader. And when they took him out, that power base was supporting Assad. And that ultimately, in Bibi's analysis, removed the support from Assad and toppled him. but they weren't trying to take out Assad. My view now, I don't know.
So you don't think that, and I don't, it is very confusing, and I don't know that anyone really knows all the details, but you don't think that Israel or Turkey, our NATO ally Turkey, played any role in toppling Assad?
I don't know. I don't know that they did. Look, my understanding of that, they clearly took out Nasrallah and Hezbollah. They've decimated Hezbollah, but Hezbollah is waging war on them. So decimating Hezbollah was very good for Israel and very good for America, too. I mean, Hezbollah hated us.
Yeah, but I'd like to remind you, Ted, of what everyone says when this comes up, is that these terrorist organizations have very little chance of touching America. The only way they can is if the borders are open. And even then, the number of people that they can get into America and actually attack it with per year is, double digits.
Which country is it? Remind me, the one that keeps funding all the open borders activists. Oh, right, Israel.
There is that, yeah. And you might argue that the only reason for that is so that they can maintain a plausible excuse that Israel needs to be defended. I could see that being the only reason they do that.
If you remove the source of your problem, you don't have the problem anymore. But then you can't constantly kvetch about it and ask for handouts.
True. So the interventionist thing and the isolationist thing, chat, yeah, the US doesn't need to for its own defense. I'm not saying it needs to do any of this shit. I'm saying that it would be beneficial sometimes to intervene. Beneficial not just for the US, but beneficial for everyone, except the bad people. And there are genuinely sometimes where it's best for everyone, except the bad people, to intervene. It's not the times they have, and most of the time they should stay isolationist. But in terms of interacting with other nations that deserve it, sure. Helping where it's actually warranted, like with Taiwan, sure. And occasionally intervening in more hostile ways, sure. But small scale and not against allies. But that's the correct strategy. Other than that, focus on your own shit. The US has absolutely no need to worry about sand-covered, what's the word?
Shitholes.
Yeah, well, sandy shitholes and the people in them. Let's put it that way. The sand bandits and their various threats. It doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter how much the Iranians hate America and want it to receive death. They can't do that. They can't even do that to Israel, which is right next. Well, not right next door, but near. So, yeah, and that's also. Right? Israel probably should be able to defend itself. It shouldn't rely on US handouts. However, I can see the argument that it is a useful staging area in the region for the US, where if the US needs to engage in beneficial interventionism, as I mentioned before, that sometimes it is beneficial, that Israel is a pretty good power base to launch that from. Unfortunately, the relationship currently appears to be that Israel has the power in that relationship, inexplicably. The situation should be that Israel is a US vassal. If that's what it is, if that's why the US cares about it, reassess. Why do we care about Israel? It's not because they're our greatest ally. They're definitely not. It's not because they are, a good country full of good people. They don't seem to be. It's not because they actually have our best interests at heart and would never try to hurt us. No, that's not true either. It's because they are an airstrip in an area we need an airstrip.
Honestly,
okay.
I know the boomers keep going, oh, they're our greatest ally. But I actually cannot think of a worse ally throughout any point in history.
In a sense, yeah.
Literally the worst ally that has ever existed. And yet somehow they keep getting a free pass.
I don't think it's, even assuming the maximum generosity to the boomer position or the hawk position of we need that staging area, it really does not explain how lenient they've been to Israel. If that's what they need, then for what Israel has done over the years, the US should have been toppling their leaders, should have been sanctioning them, should have been telling them off one way or the other. There's much more to it than just an airstrip, unfortunately. I think most of that is just that the Israelis have focused all of their tech tree points on subversion. They're not the only ones. I believe China's been doing the same thing, but still. Yes, go on.
You know what else it doesn't explain? The USS Liberty.
Yeah, I have heard different versions of that story. Obviously, the one is that Israel just attacked the American ship. The other is that it was not intentional or hostile. There was some reason for it, but I don't know the truth of it. I don't know if anyone does.
According to the radio transcripts, they were being begged to stop, and they just didn't.
Yeah, I could see, like, obviously, it doesn't seem like there's an excuse there. But I could see how they might be receiving that and not know who it's from or what it's about, or not, or like the communication didn't get to the right people in time, or the missile had already been sent by the time they got it, or something like that. Well, Pierre, what I mean is it might not have been intentionally hostile. It might have been an accident or something.
ID'd at the time by the crew of the ship.
Yeah.
It wasn't a missile. It was a continued airstrike attack by strafing the boat continuously.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Repeatedly.
What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I don't remember the details, but I did read about it from. I've heard this version of events. I've heard a different one. I can't remember the details, but either way, yeah, that one is pretty bad. Even if it was an accident, that's a complete fuck up, and that's what I mean. Even if it was a fucking accident, that should have been, international condemnation and regime change in Israel potentially. But for some reason, the US helped cover it up. So obviously, it's not just a valuable airstrip. There's more to it than that, and that needs to be either stopped or publicized.
So there's one other thing I'd like to mention regarding that, and that is, yes, it is very difficult to visually identify friend from foe in the air. A-10 pilots notoriously struggle with this and are kind of famous for their friendly fire incidents. However, when you have a U.S. warship, you can tell it's theirs because it's the biggest one around.
Someone says there are evangelical congressmen who don't need to be paid off to support Israel because they take the Book of Revelation literally and see the establishment and support of Israel as a requirement to trigger Armageddon, and they're actively trying to make it happen in the near future. Now, I would hope the number of congressmen who are that insane is low. But I don't know if that's true. I expect that for a lot of them, that is the excuse. And the actual reason is money. One way or the other. Israel says, press boomers on why Israel is our greatest ally. First, they'll move the goalposts in the Middle East. Then they'll turn it back on you. Well, can you name one better? Then they'll block you if you say France or South Korea.
Well, the line that I most often hear is, well, they're the only democracy in the Middle East. Whatever that means.
I don't know how democratic they actually are, but haven't they had the current guy for quite a long time?
Yeah, that's the neat part. It's not all that democratic, really.
Yeah, being a democracy is about more than just calling yourself
our
one.
Guy who happens to be a huge war hawk, and that's it. And all the other options, well, they don't get any press. Just one guy.
Ted says, the problem is they don't actually study the book. It's very clear that a synagogue of Satan is not our greatest ally, and they will usher in the Antichrist. That's Ted's religious perspective. Fair enough. Someone says, it's less than it used to be, and trying to force a prophecy, either literal or metaphorical, is extremely heretical. Yeah, I guess it is.
It is.
But the problem with France and South Korea, Israel, is that South Korea is a feminist cult country, and France is full of French people.
French people?
I would put Assad in the category of an unintended consequence, and whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I think time will tell.
For the United States.
Yeah, for the United States. I think time will tell the new leadership there. You're right to be concerned. Let me step back and let's talk regime change generally. I mentioned Syria. I also oppose the Iraq War. I think the Iraq War was a serious mistake. And we have a pattern, and going back to this binary of the interventionist and the isolationist, the interventionists advocate over and over again. There's a bad guy. There's a dictator who's doing bad things to his people. And they say, let's go topple him. And you have dictators in the Middle East who are killing radical Islamic terrorists. We come in and topple them. The radical Islamic terrorists take over and they start killing Americans. In my view, how the heck does that help us? Like, Saddam Hussein was a horrible...
It helps America because the military-industrial complex makes more weapons. And Ted he's trying to take the more sort of higher order perspective on this rather than just one of the two dichotomies. He's trying to say, but what is actually true? And I respect that. But you do have to wrestle with the fact that it is actually beneficial to the US for there to be military chaos in the world. Not necessarily net beneficial, but gross beneficial, because it's an excuse to manufacture more weapons, which helps the US economy. Now, whether that's a net benefit, I don't think it is, especially not long term. And I think the people are speaking that essentially, not that they're necessarily aware of this whole entirely, but that generally speaking, there's a vibe that no, it's not long-term beneficial, that we need some different order. Either way, you have to wrestle with that possibility. You have to wrestle with the possibility that if you go for isolationists, if you go for a different approach to international relations, you may lose things you didn't expect to lose. Indeed, Ronald, but I wonder how much safer the world would be if the military, like not just shitholes, but the world as a whole would be if the military-industrial complex was not quite vestigial, but significantly less effective.
See, the thing is, we can satisfy most of the people that matter by going with the enlightened position of flatten both. Fuck them. They don't want to learn how to behave. They don't care to learn. Fuck them. It's the Middle East. Who's going to care?
It's
that region has always been a problem throughout the entire of human history. They're not just going to suddenly wake up one day and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to not be a problem.
Yeah. Well,
no, this is just how they are.
Agreed, mostly. But there have been large periods in history where they weren't a problem, firstly, though most of them
yes, when their power was limited.
Well, I mean, about 1,000 years ago, it was the center of mathematics. It was basically the center of civilization. It's a long time ago, I agree, but it's not that the people are necessarily predisposed to chaos and evil. I think that's been precipitated by the usefulness of there being conflict in that region, especially over the last sort of 30, 40, 50 years.
You know what, Somnus? Maybe you do have the right solution. Reconquista of the entirety of the Middle East.
Oh, that'd be fine in my book. The zero state solution is a fun idea. The thing is that a lot of bad headlines, obviously, for a long time, but you do risk such a change in power that you end up losing more from it than you gain from ending the conflict or from ending all future conflicts. And you might get
who cares
nations,
what journalists think? They're not people.
Well, I don't mean just journalists. I mean, that first part, yeah, you might not care what the journalists think, but the way the region would shake out as a result of that, it might end up in a situation that's much worse than how it started. And, you can just keep bombing your problems. But who resides nearer to those regions? Who would be able to more easily exert power over those regions to capture them? Who over there has a lot of money and the resources to, conquer regions and the intent to run them? Well, there's a few. Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, India, Pakistan, Turkey.
Oh, we have to make sure that we take out India for good measure.
Yeah. And
we cannot let the street shitters take over.
I appreciate the notion of all the smelly nations in the world being wiped off the map. Just that I think after that, you're going to get a situation which is more chaotic and might be worse for you in the end. But, yeah. And also, if we're talking about wiping out a nation the size of India, then that's probably going to cause a nuclear winter or something. Ronald says, the only times the Middle East has ever been peaceful is when an empire has forcibly pacified the region and maintained the strength to keep that peace. Was that the case 1,000 years ago? when it was the center of civilization to a large extent? I actually don't know much about the era. I'm just asking. Daka said, firstly, I'm not here to take one side or the other. This is the USS Liberty. It was a SIGINT vessel, not a warship. And if I recall correctly, they refused to identify themselves when hailed after initial detection during the 6-Day War. See, I have looked into it a little bit, and I remember thinking, okay, this is probably a bit more of a two-sided story than it sounded like. I'm sure that the Israelis did wrong, but I don't think it was quite as one-sided as people said it was. See, Ronald, if it's a Muslim empire that pacified it, then that's not pacification, it's Muslim. If it was a less radical Islamic empire, then that just proves my point. That the people in that region are not necessarily predisposed to violence. Of course, over time, that may have been selected for a little too much. So it would be very difficult to reverse it now. But I agree that in practice, the region is just trouble. But I don't think it has to be. I don't think you'd have to remove all the people in it for it to no longer be necessarily a problem. If the world just left it alone for like 50 years, I think it would return to, not particularly world leading, but reasonable stability. But of course, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's the one that people always point to as being the paedophile warlord, which is true. So I think it kind of makes my point, Ronald.
Human being. He murdered and tortured people. Unequivocally bad guy. But it got much worse after we toppled him. And you ended up having ISIS rise up. I mean, that was the cause of ISIS, was toppling Saddam Hussein. Same thing in Libya. You had Gaddafi, another horrible guy, that under Obama, we toppled him. And you ended up having radical Islamic warlords taking over. And so, it's the question I asked in Syria. Okay, well, what's the plan? And how is this good or bad for the United States? And so I don't think... With Iran, I view Iran as very different from Iraq.
But up to that point, you say we disagree. I don't hear really anything. I'm not quite sure what happened in Syria, but I don't know. So, right. But other than that, I don't hear anything I disagree with at all.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're in a complete agreement. I wonder, though, is there a successful regime change that the United States supported that you're aware of in the last 100 years?
Sure. Defeating the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union collapsing, winning the Cold War.
Not a bad example, actually, but I think that was going to happen anyway. I don't think the US, I don't know, actually. I don't know how involved the US was in the actual toppling part. I think it was already on its way out. I think by the time
they collapsed under their own weight.
Yeah, but by the time it collapsed, I think the US, I mean, for years had just been like, we don't need you to collapse. They kind of became somewhat symbiotic. I'm not sure exactly what the Soviet Union was providing in return. I guess just natural resources. But the US didn't seem to mind them existing.
Oh, they wouldn't have existed without the U.S. to begin with.
Yeah, I've never looked into it
was
very deeply.
It was America that sent over all the people who built their cities and their factories and pretty much everything else that they continue to use and still do to this day.
I had not looked into it very deeply, but I suspect that it was not actually supporting itself economically for a long time before it collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was mostly the US. I think that's what I'd heard as well. Any system which has authoritarian horrors that the Soviet Union had, I will immediately assume they are not a nation that is funded internally. They are a nation that's propped up from externally. Two examples come to mind. One, Soviet Union. My point for query, right? Two, arguably proving the point, North Korea.
Yeah.
Which is propped up by China. So that's what I'm saying. A nation that doesn't need to care about its citizens, get this, won't. Hence, Soviet Union and North Korea. Someone says, is the UK on your list given the Parliament's recent action? Which one in particular? China and Russia are the big examples, yeah. I mean, to be fair, China's pretty much on that list too. As I say, I don't know as much about how it is internally for individuals in China, but I know it's bad. I don't think it's as bad as North Korea, though, or as bad as it got in the Soviet Union, but I know it's very bad. By dentists. Yeah. Well, so they opened up for investment and the oligarchs bought up everything and extracted the wealth from it. Yeah. Fair enough. Daka says the USSR collapsed because the US realized if we tripled the defense budget, the Soviets would bankrupt themselves trying to compete.
Pretty much. Well, between that and their space program, like they couldn't really do a whole lot else.
And it says, pick an action. I was thinking the specific example of voting for abortion up until birth, which is too extreme even for Virginia and New York somehow. Yeah, I saw that happen. That's kind of absurd. However, whilst I know a lot of you care a lot about it, it's not among my top priority issues. There are many worse things my government has done than that, in my opinion. Let's continue.
That was the most consequential step for U.S. national security interests of our lifetimes.
Okay.
And
so you would classify that as a regime change that we affected?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Look, you and I are in my office. We're sitting next to a painting of Reagan in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And up top are the words, tear down this wall, in German, in the style of the graffiti.
Right.
And I think those are the most important words any leader has said in modern times. And if you look at how Reagan waged the Cold War.
You might say fight, fight, fight is a close second. It's a hell of a moment.
War. And Reagan is very much my model for how to, I actually think how Reagan took on the Soviet Union is exactly how we should take on China. Now, starting from the point.
Yeah, I would love to see the West put the genuine, intelligent sort of forces we have into play to just gradually collapse those nations. Because currently, that's happening to us, and there's no good reason for it.
Yeah, I would love to see the alienation of communists the same way we used to have.
Yeah. There is absolutely no way it's better for the world for China to win the subversion game. Now, I am...
Did you know that at one point, the U.S. legally ruled that communists were legally not people? It is time to return.
I am somewhat optimistic about the notion that because they've been going so heavy on the subversion, that the West will be inoculated to it to some extent, just enough to resist it, and then will hit back twice as hard and actually win. Very optimistic, I know, but that's what I'm hoping for. Because in their current state, China, arguably Russia, and probably Israel as well, should cease, should reform, particularly China.
Look, Reagan was not an interventionist. In 8 years, the biggest country Reagan ever invaded was Grenada. He was very reluctant to use U.S. military force.
He didn't respond after the 83 barracks bombings.
You're right. Yeah, he made the judgment that the risk exceeded the benefits. And that's a very rational decision to make. And it's reflected. Trump has made those same decisions where he is willing to use military force, but he very much asks, okay, is this good or bad for America? Does this endanger U.S. servicemen and women or not? And one of the points about the Cold War, look, nobody in their right mind wanted a shooting war between America and the Soviet Union. The two biggest nuclear powers on Earth firing bullets at each other is really unhealthy for human beings. Same thing is true with China. Nobody with any sense says, hey, let's go to war with China. That's really dumb, and a whole lot of people could die. But the Cold War showed we've got lots of tools short of sending the Marines to fight against a regime.
Yeah.
And one of the most important tools is the bully pulpit. And so when I say I support regime change, I actually think just simply laying out what the Ayatollah does. And so I spend a lot of time, I speak to Iranian dissident groups. I speak out against human rights abuses. I think shining a light on the depravity of leaders is a really powerful tool that America has.
Should we?
Now, he's being quite optimistic there, I think, quite idealistic. He's not wrong, but he's overstating how effective it is. That's the kind of thing that works over a long period of time, but it doesn't always work. And sometimes the really sort of incisive subversive actions can work on a much shorter time scale with no sign that you did it, except to a few people who know but can't say, and can work very quickly and very effectively. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz is out there talking to radical groups who won't actually have an effect, just trying to convince them of things they already know, and that kind of thing. So it can be done well, in which case, over a long term, I think it produces more stable results to do it rhetorically. But unfortunately, subversion is much more powerful and can work over a shorter time span, but it is riskier. So we have to. I would prefer us to build up defenses to subversion than to build up our own subversion tactics. But we kind of have to do both. And then, once we've got those defenses in place, then Ted can go ahead and do the rhetorical long-term solution. Sorry, Quattro.
No, I was just agreeing with you, because it is an unfortunate reality that you do have to understand how to subvert in order to understand how to prevent yourself from being subverted.
Yeah. Maybe
If
China...
you don't know the tactics, you can't spot them.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Maybe China had the crash course with Maoism, 50 years of horror, and now, well, probably more than that actually. And now we're.
Well, do you know who it was that brought communism to China in the first place?
What was it? Jews, by any chance?
Yes, specifically a sect called Chabad Lubavitch.
Right, I've heard of them. They're the tunnel Jews, right?
Yes, those guys. They also brought communism to Russia, and as they were being chased out, they went, hey, why don't we go next door over to China? Surely they'll accept us there. And the Chinese went, well, these Jews are a crafty bunch, and, we should take notes from these guys, and then we'll just get rid of the ones that get uppity. And the Jews went, oh, how could this happen? Oy vey, it's not a Shoah. And then they fled.
What was that, like 96?
Oh, it was long before that, but basically the time when they had their cultural revolution over in China, that was around the point where they realized, maybe this was a mistake, but we also don't want to admit it, so we're just going to quietly leave as much as we can.
Something says the concept of human rights as the West conceives them is alien in that part of the world. Rulership there requires lots of killing people regardless to suppress worse things, no matter how icky Westerners feel about it. Completely correct. Then that doesn't disagree with what I said, but to clarify in case it's not clear, what Ted Cruz is saying, I said, was optimistic, idealistic even. I don't expect that he's just going there and saying, that's wrong, they shouldn't do that. It feels wrong to me. I suspect there's a bit more to it than that. But my point is that you don't just go there and impress your ideas upon them. You explain why they're useful, why they're better, and not just why they're better in the long term, but why they'd be better in the short term. I think one of the superpowers that Western countries have is automatic cooperation. That individual people, not because they're being forced to, but individual people self-organize into being open and polite and generous to other people in their society, to not just assuming everyone's going to be hostile. And once you've broke down the barrier of assuming everyone's going to be hostile, there's so much less wasted energy in your nation. And cooperation is so much easier. And cooperation is one of the things that makes humans better than almost every other animal. Well, than every other animal, but cooperation is done by some other animals, in some cases to a greater extent, but the way humans do it is uniquely better. So that's, I think, one of the most important superpowers of Western people. And in the Middle East, that's just not there. And what I'm describing here is a high trust society, by the way. And in the Middle East, that's just not there. If you were to somehow instill that among a part of their population, that they would trust each other, then that's something on the small scale that you could start to spread, much like the idea from TNG of giving Hugh the undecipherable concept in his head that then spread individuality throughout the collective. It's a somewhat silly idea, but that kind of thing, not exactly subversion, but just our ideology is better than theirs. And if we can find a way to gradually change theirs to be more like ours in a way that still fits the culture that they're in, then over time, it will not only be a better place, but it'll be more useful to us. Better for them and better for us. That's what I'm saying. You cannot approach it idealistically. And even what I just said was a bit too idealistic, which is why I'm saying it takes time. You can't do that quickly, but subversion often can be.
No, I'd rather not have to coexist with literal goat rapists. I mean, look, the Middle East is the only place in the world that could have come up with laws surrounding what to do after you've raped the goat.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that until they are no longer goat rapists, you just keep them at arm's length. But if anything, if you're doing anything rhetorical, you try and convince them not to be goat rapists anymore. But yeah, the subversive methods are probably better. And ultimately, the rhetorical is not, it's not exactly subversive, what we mean by subversive, but the differences are a gradient line, not a bright line. Ultimately, it's about, pressing the right buttons in the right places at the right time that cause cascade effects that change things. And that's always going to be more powerful than the rhetorical way. But the rhetorical way probably will produce more longer lasting results if it works. But it's very difficult to get that right. Anyway, let's continue.
Do we limit our activity to that?
It depends. Again,
because the U.S. government pays opposition groups, militarized opposition groups in Iran to overthrow the government. We've done that in a lot of different places, as you know. I'm not saying it's bad, but that's very different from what you're describing. You're saying we're making a moral case, as we did for 7 years with the Soviets. Our system works.
No, Ghost, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying give them access to our stuff and they'll become more like us. No, not in the slightest. Don't give them access to our stuff. Don't interact with them. As I say, keep them at arm's length. But if you're going to interact with them rhetorically, that's the way to do it. Don't just impress your morals upon them. Make it applicable to their state of life, which is difficult and can take a long time, but it's better. Opening up the markets to a nation that's shitty in the hopes they'll get better is stupid. Though Nixon, oddly, he was very popular and made a lot of good decisions. That one, I don't think was a good decision. Someone says the Mohammedans have being goat fuckers codified into their holy book. They're not going to stop. There is some dark stuff in the Bible. Now, not as bad as the Islamic texts, I agree. But there is some dark stuff in the Bible that you just don't follow. Or you interpret around it.
I slam. It's because they slam the goats.
But every holy book has some dark stuff in it. And yes, there's interpretations that say that it's not something you're asked to do, or that, well, Jesus came to, revoke the old laws, so we don't follow them anymore. But you could interpret that different ways, and maybe there's translations or all kinds of arguments you could make. Generally speaking, it will tend towards you believe what is normal for your society to believe. There's a strong tendency towards that. So just because it's in their book doesn't mean they have to follow it. Now, Islam is uniquely resistant to modernization, to moderation, uniquely resistant to it. And that is true. And it may be that you cannot do it on a large scale reliably. In which case, don't let them in. Simple as that. Leave them in their own part of the world. And the ones over there who are willing to become vassals, we can get the resources from their countries and they can have some wealth as a result. And that's the relationship. The ones that can't.
Islam is very much a slave ideology. And if they want to be subservient, then sure, go ahead. But they can never be anything more than that until they learn how to actually be anything more. And again, they don't really care to, as I said before.
Yeah, Ghost.
But also, you could refer again to the other thing that I said is, why bother coexisting with literal goat rapists?
Yeah. Well, as I said, like, all I was trying to do was say, if you want to go the rhetorical persuasive route that Ted just mentioned, you don't do it the way someone in chat said not to do it. Agreed. You do it the way I described. But I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. I don't necessarily think it's an effective idea. I'm not against someone trying it, but obviously, as I said, subversion's a much better idea. And frankly, what I then just said just now of just any region in the shithole areas that are willing to capitulate or to cooperate, we get the natural resources, they get wealth, that's a fine relationship. The ones that don't, they can just be shitholes forever, fucking their goats.
Look, international
absolutely no
politics
reason.
follows prison rules. You beat up the biggest guy you can, and then everyone who can't do that on their own respects you as a result.
But there is no reason for the West to do anything with the Middle East except get what you need, pay a fair price, and then don't interact with them beyond that. Someone says, if a regime change happened in Iran, then the two best options are to either make them a full colony or to restore the Persian crown prince to the Shahdom and enable him to be as brutal as the Mohammedans as possible, to the Mohammedans as possible. Sure. So you're saying either either subservient to the West or a secular anti-Muslim leader. Sure. The problem with the first one is that they would rebel constantly. And the problem with the second one is that they would rebel constantly, but less. So the second one's probably the better answer. Yeah, and Ghost, it's not a contradiction. I'm not even advocating it, but if you want to try to liberalize the Middle East, which Ted does, then you would do it in the way I described, not in the way that someone in chat described. Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, keep them at arm's length. It doesn't mean you can't interact, but it just means you can't give them anything. Yeah, let's continue.
Yours doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think we made a credible case for that. And we beat them over 70 years economically.
And that was a huge part of it.
Right. I think everyone would agree that was the main part of it. We didn't beat them in Vietnam or North Korea.
The main part of it, but it was tied to a military buildup. So I think it was two things. It was one, the clarity. So Reagan came in and he described the Soviet Union as an evil empire.
Right.
And all of the intelligentsia in DC, all the Democrats, all the media, they're like, what a horrible thing to say. You can't say that. Reagan went to the United Kingdom and he said, Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. People were horrified. They asked him, all right, what's your strategy in the Cold War? He said, very simple. We win, they lose. And that was all viewed as sort of a Philistine simplicity. And I think it was exactly right. And laying that out, speaking, do you know the backstory behind the Berlin Wall speech?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
You probably know Peter Robinson, who was a speechwriter.
Yes.
So 3 times the State Department deleted those words from that speech. And 3 times Reagan wrote it back. And the State Department argued, they said, Mr. President, you can't say this. This is too bellicose. This is too provocative. And my favorite, they said, this is too unrealistic. The Berlin Wall will stand till the end of time. And Reagan said, look, this is the whole point of the speech. And less than 3 years after Reagan gave that speech, the Berlin Wall was torn to the ground. And it wasn't knocked down by American Army tanks. We didn't shoot missiles at it. It was shining truth and light that tore it down. It was also rebuilding the American military. It was what was then pejoratively called Star Wars, where the Soviet Union, their economy couldn't match our military buildup, and it bankrupted them. That's an example of peace through strength.
I wonder, I mean, is there anybody who was alive in 1989 who wouldn't trade that America for the one we live in now? There's not one person, I don't think.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, just the basic metrics, debt, suicide rate, life expectancy. I wonder why after that victory, America didn't thrive in the way that we thought that it would, that I thought that it would. My family was involved in that. I mean, we were very focused on it in my house. Like, we won. And I wonder 2 things. Why didn't the United States kind of declare victory and make some sort of arrangement with Russia that allowed like mutual prosperity rather than continuing a Cold War? And second, I wonder why the United States didn't get a lot better. Like, why don't we have better infrastructure? Why don't we have fewer homeless? Why do we have all these drugs? Like, if we won, why does our country look like this?
As it turns out, Russia wasn't the only enemy. And I don't know why China was ignored so much. Because there were already so many socialists in the West, and because the faction that were trying to topple the Soviets by military buildup were too focused on the need to have Russia as a military enemy and were too scared of what might happen if that changed. Just a guess. What's this, Daka? I don't know.
I walked across from Union Station this morning, as you do, I'm sure, every day. And all these people lying in the street and sleeping outside. It's like, what is that?
Look, there's no doubt there are really dangerous forces in our society. Some of it is politics and some of it is culture. And one of the mistakes people make in politics is thinking everything is politics. So the political answer, which I happen to believe, is we went much further down the road of liberalism. You look at Bill Clinton, who inherited the peace dividend of the Cold War being over and moved us more to the left, and then Obama accelerated it a lot. And so there are lots of
I agree.
bad economic policies, but I also think they're cultural things. You know, the loss of faith,
I agree with
the loss
all of
family.
that. I know what you're going to say, and I agree 100%. I bet there's not one word that I would disagree with. All I'm saying is, like, I think it's important to step back and ask.
But I actually think Russia has very little to do with it. So,
well, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, which is, like, we're all sort of focused on beating our adversaries abroad, but what is victory worth if our own country becomes what it is now? And maybe we're spending a little too much time focused abroad and not enough time focused on the people sleeping outside Union Station.
So look, I absolutely think we need to focus at home emphatically, and we need to focus on prosperity. We need to focus on reducing the debt, reducing spending, empowering people, low taxes, small businesses, American free enterprise. It's the most powerful force for fighting poverty the world has ever seen. I'm 1,000% there. I also recognize it is a dangerous world, and part of the responsibility of leaders, part of President Trump's responsibility, is to keep America safe. Let's go back to where we started with
But can I ask,
Iran.
you've been in the district a long time in DC, so have I.
Chat, why does the stream's frame rate drop to 20 when I move my mouse? There's something very wrong here. It might just be that the PC's overheating, I guess.
Weird.
Weird CPU spikes. This what is Jesus Christ? Massive spike there. What is it doing? It's not the draw. Whenever I move my mouse, it's just spiking like crazy. Hold on, let me check on this quickly. That's a bit excessive. Okay, it's not. I don't think it's the CPU that's spiking. I think it's probably the GPU. Let's have a look. It's not the draw PC. This is my main PC, chat. Might just be a KDE issue.
Apparently, this is being blamed on me now. I understand the want to blame it on me for that. Yes, this is definitely my my casting of harm credit score that's doing it.
That's really bad, though. I've never seen it this bad before. I mean, it's been pretty bad today, but I've never seen it this bad. All right. Let me try closing some things, chat. I've got all the code stuff open from earlier. I don't think that's going to make any difference. Oh, still drops like crazy whenever I move the mouse. I thought, like, I was noticing it was happening when I moused over certain things and I tried mousing over other things. It was still happening. And now I'm just moving it just slightly. It drops the frame rate every time. The more I move it, the more it drops. That's very strange. I don't know why that's happening. I guess the GPU is overheating, but... Hold on, do I have something for sensors? AMD... No? 66 Celsius? The NVMe is 64, and the what is this PCI? I don't know which. That might be the Nvidia. That's at 83. It's a bit higher, but none of those are particularly high. Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, Atromatic. Sorry, it's been happening while I stream a lot recently, but it's not all Linux. I mean, I think I had similar issues with this PC on Windows as well. I don't know what it is. It might be some sort of like USB device or something else I've had plugged into here for years that's just sending interrupts. Might be the motherboard or something. One of the storage devices. Just something I've had in there for years that's sending interrupts at the wrong times. Please, Clop. Is your way of asking me to throw shuckles at you? No, Matthias. I believe that with the hardware I already have, I should be getting a much better experience than this. I don't know why I'm not. It was actually better when I upgraded to or updated to the 6.12 Linux kernel, but it's still doing this. So I need to play around with some stuff. I was having this issue when I had the joint AMD NVIDIA drivers running, and I took them off, and I'm just using the AMD ones, but it's still just as bad, if not arguably worse now with them. Not for me, it's the AMD card, but NVIDIA's worse. When I've tried it, it's always been worse. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. Yeah. But like, nothing is overloaded. CPU spikes occasionally, but not up to 100%. And the GPU is sitting around sort of 50 to 70% usage during streams. And yet, I get this issue. And even when I get this issue, I'm moving my mouse right now, and it's just freezing. It's completely frozen the whole time. Why is it when I move the mouse it's doing that? That's so strange. Make sure your golden pager isn't anywhere near the PC, yeah. Well, you see, this would make sense, because I've noticed that most of the time the stream is okay, but then sometimes it gets really laggy for no known reason. I just never really noticed, I guess, that it's correlated with me moving the mouse. I'm going to have to look into that. Yeah, someone else. I saw that. I have that story today, but we're going to focus on this interview because people wanted to earlier. I guess we could ask again, maybe a bit further into the stream, hey, should we continue with the interview, or should I guess we'll ask it now just to get an idea. Chat, press 1 to continue with the interview, because I think there's more juicy stuff later in the interview, and press 2 to go to other stories. I'll continue for now, but you guys vote.
And the city's way more dangerous, and Congress runs this city.
No, it's a complete crap hole.
So I'm saying, like, no Iranian's ever going to kill me, but I could get carjacked here.
Well,
and I just don't understand how the Congress could run this city and focus on the dangers of Iran when the city is like garbage. Okay. It's garbage.
But Congress doesn't run the city. We could.
Congress does run the city. It's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution, but they've given home rule, so it's a Democrat mayor.
You can take it back. You control the Congress.
I'd vote for it, but it is a question of math.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, why? How can people ignore? It's like, if my own kids are drug addicts, but I'm focused on my neighbor's kids, it's like I'm neglecting my own kids. And there's a sense in which the Congress is neglecting the country that elected them in favor of this.
Yeah, not just your neighbor's kids from a whole different fucking city or country, to extend the analogy. Yeah, it would be crazy. If they're not just drug addicts either, because that's difficult to solve. But like, imagine a problem your kids have that's easy to solve. Like, they've got some horrible medical condition, but you could solve it by just taking them to the hospital or even to the GP. And you're not doing it. You're focusing on some problem miles away with some kids who have a different, much more serious problem, but one that you can't really solve, but you're still pouring all of your effort into it and none into your own children, and that problem's fairly easy to solve. Like, a lot of the problems in the West, as I said, are quite easy to solve. Not for an individual, but for the nations that contain them, they're definitely solvable. But yeah, it is kind of crazy. And it is, well, it's a bigger problem I think nations end up going through when they're too powerful and have too little existential threat. It becomes more profitable for the powerful people in those nations to create and farm problems than it does for them to just do useful things.
Relentless focus on other people's problems. That's the way it feels as an American.
Look, there are lots of problems in America that we need to fix. Why is DC a pit? Because you have a mayor and a Democrat city council that won't let police officers arrest bad guys. And in every city you see across the country, whether it's New York, whether it's Chicago, whether it's LA, whether it's San Francisco, if you have Democrats, we see the LA riots where they won't let people be arrested. All right.
Then why not work in regime change here? Why not use the bully pulpit?
I do. What do you think I do every day? And
I never see a Republican senator stand up and say, I just walked to work this morning over people dying of drug ODs. We're going to shut this place down unless they fix it. They're mad about Putin. Like, what did Putin do to Washington? Nothing.
Look, in terms of regime change, let's talk this week. The riots in LA. I've made very clear that the cause of those riots are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. And when you elect communists who hate America, who stop law enforcement from arresting criminals, you get what you get on the street.
Amen. I agree.
My in-laws are Californians, and they're wonderful people. Heidi grew up on the Central Coast of California. And I remember I was texting with my mother-in-law, and I think I sent her a video of criminals going into a store and just looting in California. And her response, she said something like, "Well, this is really terrible. I wish we could. It's a shame we can't do anything about this." I said, "Yes, you can. Go in and arrest them, throw their butts in jail, put them in handcuffs,
100%.
and it stops."
Exactly.
And so we know how to fix these things. And DC is I think DC voted, if I remember right, 92% Democrat. Democrat policies don't work, and they destroy every community that they are in charge of.
Then why don't Republicans assert their constitutional authority over the city? Don't they control the Congress?
Yes, I'd be all for it.
Who's against it? Do you think?
Susan Collins is really vocally against it. So on questions of home rule, so for example, let's take an issue you and I care a lot about, the COVID lockdowns. I had a couple of years ago in the middle of them. DC was proposing, the DC school district was proposing throwing out of school any child that was not vaccinated. And at the time, if I remember correctly, it was something like 40% of the African-American students in DC were not vaccinated. So they were talking about literally throwing out 40% of the kids at public school. And so I had a vote on the Senate floor to say, look, they can't throw kids out of school for this. And we ended up having a big argument. And part of the argument was home rule, where there was, and Susan was the most vocal Republican that's like, no, we have to let DC run. And I'm like, why? Constitution gives us the power to do it. And it ended up, by the way, every single Democrat.
Sorry, I think this part of the review probably isn't the really juicy part. We will get to the juicy part. 8-Bit says, a different approach about the riots in California. And then want to know why LA, Chicago, and NYC are panicking about ICE. More illegals equals more fake addresses. Yep. More fake addresses equals bigger population counts. Yep. Bigger counts equals more federal money. Add in illegal voting with permanent Democrat control. Yep. This is all things that we've said. I actually, except for I didn't know that just having more population means more federal money, actually. But obviously the illegal immigrant voting part we've talked about before. These cities aren't sanctuaries, they're fraud factories, she says. They're scared of ICE exposing the receipts, the rigged votes, the shell nonprofits, the contracts tied to cartels, and the federal grants based on lies. The jig is up. I bloody hope the jig is up. I want to see far more force being used by ICE. I don't mean on the small scale, I mean large scale. I don't mean be more forceful to individuals, though be as forceful as you need to be. I just mean I want to see ICE actually topple entire sanctuary cities. I want to see every 2 or 3 months, one of them just gets toppled. Every single building, which is like a business which employs illegals, ICE just walks through and starts arresting people. Specifically illegals, obviously. Keep the mandate clean, but it's, shall we just say, chat, a target-rich environment.
There'd be a lot of hotel chains that would probably go under, which
So be
I'm
it.
all for.
So be it. Someone says more population also means more congressional seats after the census, so even if illegals don't vote, if they're counted on the census, they give the Democrats more representation in Congress regardless. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Matthias. Someone says 39 Democrats, 8 Republicans, and 3 independents. Of the top 50 largest cities in the US, those are the mayors. Yes. Level that Walmart, boys. Yup. Yeah, if you press 2 for Spanish, then ICE is just alerted to your location, as Eric says. Quite.
Damn right. That's what we need.
The US really needs that, and the US is not the only one, but a good place to start.
Democrat, all of them, voted in favor of the DC public schools being able to throw out 40% of the black kids from school. And I said, look, you throw a kid out of school, you got a 14, 15-year-old boy, you throw him out of school, you know what's going to happen next. He's going to join a gang. He's going to engage in crimes. He's going to engage in drugs. He could be dead within 5 years if that kid doesn't get an education. And the Democrats were more than happy to say, we don't care. Right now, our religion is get the vaccine or to hell with you.
But can you see, I mean, once again, I couldn't agree with you more, but can you feel the frustration of people, including your voters, every American, at the emphasis on foreign countries and the threat we supposedly face, a lot of which is fake, obviously, over the kind of slowly unfolding tragedy of what's happening to our country? The dollars spent, the aid packages to Ukraine to pay the retirement of civil servants in a country that we have nothing to do with, the endless support for Israel, very expensive. When people are literally buying groceries on credit in the United States, can you feel like it's nothing against Ukraine or Israel or any other country?
All right, let's stop. You said the support for Israel very expensive. How much support do we give to Israel?
Well, you tell me. You vote for it.
Yeah, it's about $3 billion a year is the military assistance.
Is that the only assistance?
Yeah, we just have military assistance. Israel does not have additional assistance. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and it's $3 billion a year.
So what is it costing to support the bombing campaign to protect Israel right now from Iran?
So I don't know right now, but I'll tell you this. Let's go back to the touchstone on foreign policy, American interest. Our support, our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security
But what
interest,
does it
and
cost?
it benefits us.
Sorry. All right, Ted, you've made the thesis. I appreciate you coming forward and just making it. I want now for you to convince me that it actually is, because I am not sure I believe you on that, Ted.
Or at the very least, answer the fucking question.
Yeah. David says it doesn't benefit the US. JDiv says cut Cruz. I am willing to hear him out, but I am dubious. I'm skeptical.
Enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No, that's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration, under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief has control of the armed forces. And so President Trump has made some decisions that we'll know the cost over time, but I don't know the last week. I don't have visibility on that. The annual cost is $3 billion. It's a 10-year memorandum of understanding, and that's the principal driver of the cost. But let me make a point. We get massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares the Mossad is one of the best intelligence sources on the planet. The enemies of Israel, the people who hate Israel, they all hate us. It's almost a perfect overlap. And so if we tried to recreate, if we're just trying to defend America, we tried to recreate the national security benefits of our alliance with Israel.
Ted, do you not think it's possible that your first 2 points are connected? Like, these are good points in isolation, but do you think it's possible that Mossad, good as they are, have made sure that all their enemies also hate America?
It turns out just a little bit of critical thinking gives you quite unsettling answers.
Some of them, I'm sure it already was that way, but I'm sure that they've been nudging things in that direction. I mean, look, what is more beneficial for the nation of Israel, the state of Israel? What is more beneficial for them than total US support in the world today? What could be more beneficial to them than that? So why would they not dedicate their entire intelligence infrastructure to making that happen?
Whenever I hear one of these people going on about why we need to support Israel and keep sending them money, all I hear is, well, my boyfriend has told me that he needs my money so that he can take my wife out, but they haven't actually gone out in like 6 months. He just keeps running away with the money, but I'm going to keep giving it to him. I think it's a really good idea. I found that he bought a new car recently, though. I haven't been able to even ride in it, though. That's the retardation that I hear.
Yeah.
It's cuck behavior.
That's interesting. Okay.
It is the ideology of a literally retarded cuckold. Why send your hard-earned money to a country that hates you and wants you to collapse? There is no good reason for it. And again, there has never been a worse ally to anyone in the entirety of human history than Israel. The fact that it is permitted to exist is astounding to me. It doesn't add up
Mm.
until you account the subversion.
Yeah. Matthias says Quattro is suspiciously good at the cuck voice. I resent this slander against my friend Quattro, but he is. It's true.
Well, you see, I've been making fun of them for about as long as I've been drawing breath.
Mm.
It is my natural state to be making fun of Redditors and Israel shills.
Mm. Mm.
Oh, fuck off, Ghost.
No
matter what I do, no matter,
How
you
is
know
that
what?
relevant?
You know what this is? It's because I'm so squeaky clean that there's spurious allegations that are made against me. I am now suffering from my own success.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to do something on my system that might cause some weird visual bugs for you guys. Tell me. Well, don't tell me, but it should. I should be able to continue the stream, but it might look weird. Okay, did that work? No, it didn't fix it.
Oh, see, Ronald, it's because I own up to my faults, unlike a certain Sicilian. Well, yeah. Yeah, look, at least I wasn't born with the disability of being a woman. Then it would be truly over.
Jewish
Bloodline curse is pretty bad, but, it's not as bad as being a woman. Literally, did you know that Jews have a prayer thanking God for not making them a woman at birth? I'm not kidding about that. That's real.
Go ahead, chat. Say based. I don't know, chat. Who do you hate more, women or Jews? Yes. Matthias, really impressing 8-bit here. Sorry, chat. I'm just reading through something on the.
It would be entirely possible for you to be put in the human pet role. Don't forget that. Yeah, remember. The thing that you implemented very recently doesn't take that much in the grand scheme of things. And I and my wife put together, we definitely have the resources to do it.
I suppose.
In fact, we have more than enough.
I suppose I'd have to say that the role, I guess I would have to say that it can't specifically be human pet because that's a different promise, right? That's the promise about the top of the TP board. But almost anything else.
Do something worse.
Well, I'd like to remind you all, since it's been brought up, that there is a curse. You can control the curse. There is now a curse in Cabal. It is a role which is applied to people, and you can move the curse using User coins, or real money. It's let me get the thing. Actually, it's in Arcanium, and I'll forward it to live chat. There we go. The curse. There is now a curse in Cabal. The role, currently called Marcusi the Kitten of Matthias, the curse, can be removed to any user in the server named anything and with a custom icon. For £25, you can move the curse. For £25, you can change the name and icon of the curse. And for £50, you can do both at once. User coins can also be spent for this, so it's 5,000 to do both. It's currently on Marcus and named Marcusi the Kitten of Matthias, applied by Nomon. I think it would be funny to throw it back onto Nomon, personally. But he's not currently here. So that's a new feature in Cabal. And that can be enacted. Accepting multiple donations to one goal, says Ghost. If they're close together and if they all clearly state the same thing, yes. I've got no special way of tracking it. I'm just going to be tracking it individually. So make them very clear and keep them close together. But yes, I will accept that. Matthias says, will the Marcusi part be automatically changed if it's just moved? No. No, the name stays the same, as does the icon, which is currently a female elf, which makes sense given it's on Marcus. So anyone else can become Marcusi. for £25, you can decide it to anyone. We could sentence.
Do you really want to be sentenced being Marcusi?
It's not named Marcusi because it's on Marcus. By the way, here are the links. How is the female elf icon different from the male elf icon? It's really similar. Yeah, there are the links if you would like to engage in this. There are, of course, other things that can be engaged in. By the way, the change I was talking about making to the TP system so that the decay rate works differently, I haven't actually implemented that yet. I might not. But since we're talking about this now, chat, let me introduce you to this thing, this news. Somewhat small news, but it will be bigger. Oh, thank you, Bright. The economy system that I've been talking about for ages and failing to implement. I've actually made some significant progress. The core of the economy system is ready. So currently the part where you tell it what transfers to make, you tell it what money to import into the system or to export, something I probably won't use, but it's in there anyway. That part's done. And that part writes to disk, gets the data back from disk, and can even cooperate between multiple different processes running this library in them separately and synchronize the data reads and writes. So it's completely consistent between them. That is done. Oh no.
Oh, I see how it is.
Move the curse to Quattro.
Well, in that case, give me just a moment.
All right. Matthias, I can move the curse to Quattro now if you want to get like a screenshot, but I think he's just about to move it to someone else. So just tell me if you specifically want the screenshot, but otherwise it would be kind of odious to have to do it like every few seconds. He wants a screenshot. All right, I'll move it then. Sorry, Quattro, but the man did pay me. Okay, so I need to find Marcus.
Just a moment.
Your lucky day. Rolls. There we go. And then Quattro gets the roll. Congratulations, Quattro. You are the new Marcosi for the next few minutes. Triple says, are you saying that people can pay me to make comics in User coins? The way it's going to work is that the Cabal credit, I might call it that, not sure yet. My plan is it won't be directly tradable, but I will introduce a system to allow people to basically buy stocks in products, which people can make themselves and set the prices on. And then the stocks can be traded. So what I'm imagining is a free market in Cabal, which includes the currency being part of the market. So people can create currency because they need to in order to be able to trade with each other. So the credit part that I've created, ooh, very nice. Mathusi Cybersmith's ABDL Playmate. Jesus, that's creative, Triple.
That was mine.
Oh, was it?
I did say I could come up with something worse, and I did.
Okay,
Don't
I will
tempt
make
me.
that change.
Don't tempt me, Matthias.
All right. Mathusi, was it ABDL? Playmate.
ADBL.
ADBL. I don't know what that is. What is AD? Because I'm not putting anything on here that's like a pedo allegation.
No, it's sorry, ABDL. My bad.
What does it stand
adult
for?
Baby diaper lover.
Okay, that's fucking cringe, but it's not actually an accusation
It's
of pedophilia.
extremely cringe.
So, Mathusi, the ABDL Playmate of Cybersmith, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Congratulations, Matthias.
Well, it's happened. Eric says, while decay is still a thing for Cauldron, also Clovey for good measure. Yep, that makes sense. Second time this week you've known something sus. Any comment? I don't know. Oh, right. For the yeah, how do you know what that means, Quattro? Ghost is charging you to explain. Uh-oh. Matthias says, move and change to Quattro Quattrisi #1 Vorsh Hassan Shipper.
Damn, all right. I see how it is. We're just going to war now.
By the way, you can choose the
Are you
icon as well,
sure
chat.
you want this?
All right, let me remove the
For
icon.
those of you
The
who
role.
don't have it, here you go. As
screenshot.
Matt says here, yeah, are you surprised that I know degeneracy? I've had to combat it. Know thy enemy.
Okay, so it's being changed from Mathusi, the BDL playmate of Cybersmith, to Quatracy, #1 Vorsh Hassan Shipper. I'll just remove the icon for now because I don't know what icon you guys want. Oh, icon is a horse. Okay, I'll apply that in a sec. Hold on. Rolls. There you go. Congratulations, Quattro, on your new role. And God, the UI is not fast for doing this. Right, it is done. The request has been fulfilled. Between Vorsh and Hassan, who is the top and who is the bottom, asks Somnus. I don't want to know. I feel like that they would do
Neither
just
do
like a sideways Homo 69, because neither of them would be top.
Matthias, look, I'm going to tell you something right now. I can still cast Harm Credit Score one more time today. I have one more cast left in me. Are you sure about this?
So, Triple, how much of your comic income is going to go towards putting a silly roll on Matthias?
You don't really pay me enough.
Well, I might do with the new economy system. It's going to be a lot easier to just do arbitrary transactions. Right. Wolf has put in your note.
You motherfucker. God damn. So this is how it's going to be from now on, huh? Also, it seems audio's cut out.
Yes. My
there we go.
My mic ran out of battery. Apologies. Yeah. Given how egotistical Matthias is being in chat there, I just wonder how long it's going to be until the people decide to rise up against him. I mean,
are you really sure that you want to draw this kind of aggro, Matthias?
How many of you have a small number of coins which, if combined, could be effective? Rises doesn't even have an economy, plans on printing money. Quattro has been a bad influence on you. Actually, the current Cabal quote-unquote economy, such as it is almost certainly more deflationary than inflationary. Because in the red, for me, because my account is the only one that's allowed to go into the red, is like 300,000 or something. It's a lot. It's like, that's not pounds, that's coins. Still a lot of money. But the amount that's decayed from the topic popularity system is probably much more than that. It might even be more than that for one individual entry. Maybe more than that for just one. So there's been much more deflation than inflation. That's fair, right? That is fair. So yeah, in the new system though, there doesn't have to be any inflation at all. Money is going to be imported from real money into the system, converted to coins, and then it can be moved around within the system. It's much the same as this one. It's just better organized. Just
I couldn't be your greatest ally, and this is what you do to me. It's another shower.
Spoilers says I'm still richer than Marcus.
The ADL.
Someone says,
get green blade on the line.
Someone says, Matthias, shouldn't you be placing that curse on 8-bit instead of renaming it as Matthias's wife? Right. So yes, good news is that the economy is coming along nicely, the economy system. I'm at the point now where I'm just finishing integrating the economy part of it with the identity net part of it, which allows you guys to have basically alt accounts which are connected to the same account. Excuse me. So that if your Discord account gets banned, for example, not by Cabal, but by Discord, you can just come back on an alt and pick up where you left off with the system. I have really bad indigestion. It's very annoying, especially when I'm trying to talk. But yeah. And you can also link Subscribe Star and other things together with that. So integrating those two is not going to be too difficult. Already done most of it. And then when that's done, I just need to make a Discord UI, which I'll have done by Sunday, so I can meet my deadline of getting you guys a simple UI for a working economy system by Sunday, by the end of Sunday, which will just show a 0 for now, but I'll add more to it later. And then the next thing I'll do will be to put in the Subscribe Star data so that you guys will actually have numbers show up, that you can't do anything with them yet. That will be the next thing. So yeah, honestly, if I continue to work on this at the rate I have been, then I'm estimating that it'll only be about a week before we've replicated almost all the features of the old system. And then we can just continue going from there. So yeah, that's to look forward to. Yeah, even though like moving the mouse definitely fucks with the system, but I do still get these spikes every now and again. But the fact that it's mouse movement implies that it is just an Xorg problem. But Wayland wasn't better. When I switched over to Wayland briefly, it wasn't better. I will do a full system update at some point, and I'll see again if it's any better. But Uzulu, what will I have to complain about when the Uz economy is no longer in shambles? True. Well, you'll have other people's use of it to complain about. And what I want is to create a system that's so expressive that the folds of the system are the most interesting part. Because right now, things that we didn't even expect the system to do are the most interesting part, like the kitten thing and now the curse. But what I want is for the users of the system to create so much emergent complexity that all the really interesting stuff is buried deep in what they create, rather than in bugs I create or in favors I offer to do for specific interactions with the system. I'll do both of those too. Probably still be for some bugs, but less. But that's the plan. As an update, the SPED we discussed yesterday has been declared as an illegal immigrant to that server, and he has a deport on-site order against him, and we didn't even need to use the visual WMD. I have no idea who you're talking about. Matthias is claiming that he's getting married to 8-Bit next year. I am skeptical of this claim.
As am I. Typically, marriage requires the consent of both parties.
Typically,
unless
yeah.
he means it's an Islamic-style wedding.
Oh,
yeah, I didn't know that you were subscribing to that ideology. How many ghosts are there in your basement, Matthias?
Ronald says, is Matthias' courting of 8-Bit worse or better than mine of Die? Yours of Die involves less money, so it seems more genuine, I suppose. Oh, I don't know. Maybe the money is the stake on which you can tell it is more genuine. But money is worth different amounts to different people, so it's hard to tell. Should we continue with the interview?
Israel, it would cost, I don't know, 30 billion, 300 billion.
So can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot.
Really?
We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all... Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us. And I'm not...
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that, and
by the way,
I'm not mad at them. But you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know. Hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle.
If you found Chinese state spies in high positions of authority, you wouldn't just leave them there. If you found Iranian spies in the US, you probably wouldn't execute them or imprison them. You would say, get out and never come back. That'd be fair. Why is it different with Israeli ones? And like even fucking British spies, I don't expect you'd be as open to that if you actually found them. The question is not, are they? Because sure, they will be to some extent, but are you trying to stop that? I suppose that, his position is not necessarily unreasonable if you assume that every country does this to every other country. If it's a give and take. The question is, further than that, what are they actually doing with their position, with that information? Are they using it purely for the benefit of the US? Well, not pure, but are they using it in such a way that doesn't detriment the US? Or are they using it in a way which benefits Israel and makes the US basically Israel's vassal?
What I just witnessed here is the verbal equivalent of Tucker planting a landmine saying, hey, I've planted it right here, right in front of you. And Ted Cruz going, sweet, and then jumping headfirst into the spot. What the fuck was that? He could not have given a worse answer if he had tried.
Someone says espionage.
What's the little spying between friends,
Well, spying is very normal in the modern day, and I don't know to what extent it should just be a absolute no-go zone for allies.
Well, we know that they benefit from it because of the whole Five Eyes arrangement. It's entirely what it's for, is because they're not supposed to be able to spy on themselves.
Yeah,
I mean, they still do. Because tyrants, but that's supposed to be the way that they circumvent it and then get handed back the data, basically laundering it.
Yeah, indeed.
No, this is my first time listening to it, and Jesus Christ, it's bad.
I've seen a few clips. So far, it's not as bad as I know. Well, as I've heard it gets. I can see where you guys are coming from, but I think what Ted said so far is not too bad, but I think it probably will get worse.
Well, the implication, I would argue, is the worst part of it.
The what, sorry? Is the worst part of it?
The implication. Of him just being perfectly fine with American citizens being spied on by other nations.
Well, the Five Eyes thing is not good anyway. The problem with it is it's like a lot of other things, like surveillance, for example. It is surveillance, but it's like a lot of tools that are used by bad people. You can't just get rid of the tool, it's too useful. And if there are actually terrorists in these countries, and they are citizens of these countries, then the spying makes sense. And if the spying by another nation reveals some problem, then they should hand it off to the nation they live in. Now, other nations probably shouldn't be spying in other people, each person's nation. But if that's beneficial to all countries involved, I can't really blame them for being okay with it. It's more about what the spies do. It's less about whether they are spying, more about what they do. If they are trying to find radicals who threaten an alliance, fine. If they're trying to find citizens who dissent against the government, not fine. And if they're trying to find opportunities to turn each other into vassal states, then they're not allies anymore. And I think the problem is it's gone too far in the direction of the latter two, with almost none of the first one. At which point, the whole arrangement needs to be reformed or broken apart.
I said guiding, the overwhelming, I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest.
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president of the United States and several precedents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
Sure, I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway. And by the way, the Brits are, the Canadians are. Like, I don't think.
Well, I'm not for that at all.
Okay.
I think it's disgusting. But we don't actually pay their, we're not their most meaningful sponsor. We're not sort of paying for the operations of the British government.
So I got to say, and this is, it's weird. We're talking about isolationists, the obsession with Israel. Why is Israel?
Oh, I don't think I'm obsessed with Israel.
Okay, but I think a lot of people are. And like the question, Israel spies on us. Well, so does every other country. Why are you mad at Israel?
I guess. Oh, no. I'm hardly the one who's. I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel
from AIPAC?
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
This, in my opinion, is where I can no longer support Ted Cruz. But unfortunately, I also can't say what I think should happen to people that do this, which is that they should be kicked immediately out of politics and probably put somewhere quite dark. Unfortunately, in the US, accepting lobbying is very normal. It shouldn't be, but it is.
These are the noises of a man who is being blackmailed by Mossad.
Maybe. I can believe he really believes
it. It's the same fucking drivel that comes out of every other politician's mouth.
He may be being blackmailed, but he may really believe it.
It's the exact same talking points every single time because they're coached on it. They all have their IPAC guys. Oh, Tucker reported on this.
It
wasn't that long ago, was it?
I'm not sure I saw it. Yeah, exactly. Canon Fraser. It doesn't. What Ted said there just doesn't make sense. Yes, he is lobbied by and therefore very likely influenced by the Israel lobby. There is not a Britain PAC in the US. And if there was, there might be, but it's nowhere near the power that AIPAC has. Why? Well, what's the difference?
Canada and Mexico are right next door, and we don't have this kind of power to exert, despite being way bigger economically.
And way closer
What's
culturally.
The deal? Again, we share a border, and we can't exert that kind of influence. I mean, granted, we've had cuckolds in power for the last decade, and arguably before that too. But either way,
Pierre Trudeau probably was, whether intentionally or not, actually a cuckold. Yeah.
Oh, he got off on it.
Quite possibly.
He definitely did. I mean, his wife was famous for whoring around. That's her one claim to fame. I mean, she'd sleep with anyone and everyone.
So I didn't see anything before what Ted just said that I found particularly objectionable, but that was kind of mad. Just to make the point very clear, political lobbying is allowed in the US. I think that's crazy. If you ban it, it's still going to happen, but much less. And when it does, you have a much greater grounds to just arrest people that do it. Your politics should be based on the people, what they want. And that's going to, in some cases, align with what the powerful organizations want. But if it's just the powerful people that get to make that choice, or at least if they have too much influence, which it seems like they do, then we're just back to feudalism.
Well, as I was saying before, the moment he started down this path, I knew from that point exactly where it was going, and yep, he fucking went there. We have so many benefits, but I can't name any of them because, it's too many to name. Yeah, definitely. Just don't think about it, Graham.
Yeah, I don't get what he meant about the organization doesn't giving money, but it's individuals that believe in the America-Israel connection. It's state actors or people acting on behalf of the state either way. it's a lobbying group. They're paying you to either change your policy or because of your policy, which makes it harder to change it. So it is motivated political money exchanging, otherwise known as bribery. This is what I'm talking about. This shit should be fucking illegal everywhere, not just in the US, everywhere. And yet, it's just normal. Yeah, well, I take money from APAC. So it's not a group, it's individuals who make up a large collection of individuals, otherwise known as a group. It's fine. It's fine because they offer us benefits. Well, mostly me benefits, but us, quote unquote us, I'm part of us.
Oh, they keep his bank account topped off and he sucks them off in return.
I don't know. I don't want to assume that he's just an Israeli shell. I'm going to keep an open mind to what he's saying because I know that people in positions like he's in, of power as a senator, not over a barrel, though that's probably true as well, but as a senator, he will probably know things that I don't because he has access to confidential information, probably more up-to-date information, probably less filtered information, though that's maybe debatable. So he has more information than I do. So I'm willing to hear him out. I'm willing to hear out a perspective that is based on more information. Fine. But that did not instill confidence. Switch it very quickly. Right, let's continue.
No, it's an American lobby. It's the APAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action Committee.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that.
Really? That was not a good thing to say, Ted. For once, Tucker's face makes sense.
Yeah, for once.
What an odd thing to say, not JPEG. Quite. So, I believe he just said he came into the Congress or Senate, whatever, with the intent to be Israel's #1 supporter. Ted, did you have any other intents besides that? Was there anything else important?
Sounds like treason, doesn't it? Again, the CIA could not torture this kind of confession out of me. Like I was raised Jewish, and I would never dare say something that fucking brazen, especially when it's being recorded. Like, come on, holy shit!
Yeah, that
this
was not
just
very
goes
smart.
to prove
Sorry,
that
chat. I'm trying to
politicians
switch
have
earbud, but it's
negative
fading.
self-awareness. Anything to protect their narratives, even if it means actual self-immolation.
Yeah.
What is it this year with people self-immolating like this? I mean, first, we have that Aaron Bushnell guy, Wes, now them. Like, come on.
I can't believe that my cheap Bluetooth earbuds that I was using are so unreliable and having to switch over to my expensive wired Bluetooth setup.
Yeah, because again, why would he so openly talk about this? Like, the amount of risks that poses and getting people questioning things, people who are already starting to go, hey, I don't really see the benefits of this transaction. Like, surely, like that would do more to push them away, wouldn't it?
To push who away? Sorry, what do you mean?
Everyone away from Israel.
Well,
and the
hopefully.
idea of supporting them, like, it seems to be doing more damage than anything. Like, it amazes me how politicians, despite parroting their support for a cause, are so inept at garnering actual support for said causes.
Except for Israel.
You think it's their entire job to be able to do that. And yet they are incapable of it. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell do we even do with the political class now, aside from just go, well, we don't need you anymore. You don't do anything of value. Fuck off. Get deported with the rest of the illegals.
It's a little disturbing that Ted started earlier said what is like something along the lines of what is this obsession with Israel, and he was not talking about politicians' obsession with Israel. He was talking about people's obsession with the obsession politicians have with Israel. And now he's talking about how he got into the Senate hoping to be the biggest advocate for Israel. Like, come on, Ted. You can't really make those two things gel. Someone says Jewish self-sabotage, which is a tale as old as kikery, seems to have become contagious and is spreading to the closest ones to Israel. Yeah, I guess so.
I guess so. It's that hubris, that suicidal hubris that they have.
I'm very glad that this issue is very much open for discussion now. And I commend Tucker for making it so, for helping to make it so, for taking the opportunity when it is, because this issue needed to be discussed. I mentioned this last stream, but just in case some of you weren't there, I was saying before Trump won that assuming he does, that I don't think this culture war is going to be the time that we really deal with the Israel problem. We'll deal with a lot of other things, but the Israel problem might wean on for a long time longer, and we'll deal with it later. I'm at the point where I'm kind of hopeful that we'll deal with the Israel problem as well.
I think the Israel problem is quite central to this, and pretty much every other conflict that we've had.
It might well be. If so, then it's inexorable. We'll have to deal with it. I wasn't sure exactly how central it was, but yeah, I'm open to it being.
And the more that the current global homo establishment keeps trying to clamp down on talking about it, the worse it's going to get for them.
Wolf says, remember the Bill Maher interview with Sharon Osbourne where he was openly celebrating that London is less white, called it a victory? No, I don't remember that, but Bill Maher, isn't it? Am I thinking of two different people? Bill Maher spelled differently? We're talking about different people? Or is it, there is another Maher, isn't there? M-A-H-A-R or M-A-G-E-R. Can't remember. Fire says, frankly, the founders should have made it so all federal officers require being born in the US, live here for a majority of your life, and go back at least 3 generations. Yeah, that would have been a good defense mechanism against various powers.
No dual citizens ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So it would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. Let's continue.
AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC...
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who work at AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay.
It's
when was the last time AIPAC took a position that deviated from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
All the time.
Name one.
Okay. Let me go back and give a little history. If you want to do a deep dive on AIPAC,
I don't. I want to do a shallow dive that gets...
No, I'm not going to do a simple...
I don't think Ted... I know it sounds like it. I don't think Ted's being deliberately evasive. I don't think he has a politician's sort of dishonest temperament. I think he actually kind of has a bit of an autistic, more sort of philosophical temperament for information. He has learned certain tricks of politics, but I don't think he's actually using them that much. I think what he's trying to do is to express what is opinions that he doesn't entirely hold for his own reasons. He is partially motivated to hold them. But he's trying to.
He's a career politician.
He wants to try and give the broad picture so that he can justify what he's going to express as the shallow picture or the narrow picture. And I don't think he's going to be able to find a good enough justification, but he's going to try. So I don't think he's being evasive or deceptive. I think he's trying to explain it, maybe even justify it to himself. He's hoping to find that justification in the broader explanation.
See, you get much further in life by just assuming that every single word that comes out of a politician's mouth is a lie, and if it happens to be true later, great. Then they're finally being honest. They're learning something, maybe. But usually, if they're saying something that's true, it's usually to obfuscate something else that was false.
Yeah, it is safer to do that, but I'm less concerned with what is intellectually safe and more concerned with what is strictly true. And it is my belief that with most politicians, they lie most of the time. Ted, I think it's a more complex matter than that. I don't think he's actually lying or trying to evade the truth. I think he believes that he is interested in the truth. I don't think he has succeeded in that goal. But he succeeded more than most other politicians. I'll say that.
To me, this reeks of the fear of, oh God, my handlers are going to have a stern talking to with me afterwards.
Maybe I'm wrong. It'd be interesting to see some sort of candid behind the scenes view of Ted just talking off the cuff and see how close it aligns with this.
I don't need smell-o-vision as a kike. I can smell his panic through the screen.
I don't know. I don't get that impression personally, but let's keep watching.
I want to get to the core question. AIPAC is lobbying for a foreign government. And it's not.
No.
It's lobbying for the United States.
It is lobbying for a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Okay. So
and
it's not has nothing to do with the foreign government.
It wants America and Israel to be closely allied.
Okay. But it's lobbying on behalf of the interests of another country.
So that's not true at all. And if
it's not true.
No. And
how much contact do you?
How many of the people working there have funny names?
Do they all wear small hats? I wonder.
And yeah, the Matthias says, how is that not lobbying for Israel? It's it's effectively lobbying for Israel, even if it's not intentionally.
So you want the two nations to have more diplomatic ties, but you're definitely not doing it on behalf of the other nation that you don't reside in at all. And we're supposed to just believe this at face value. Yeah, sure, buddy. Sure.
Do you think AIPAC leaders have for the government of Israel?
No idea. I imagine
think?
some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC because AIPAC's not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade, would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure. Like if.
So I'm not mad about that. There are a million countries that lobby Washington. I like a lot of those countries, including Israel.
But AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah,
and
but
why
because what you're saying is false.
Why aren't they registered?
Matthias makes a good point. If AIPAC is not lobbying for Israel, why would Israel care that it's not strong enough? He did just say, I reckon Israel wants AIPAC to be stronger. Again, the distinction he's making is that they are not lobbying as part of Israel, but the lobbying does benefit Israel, at least incidentally, right? Which I think is just, yeah, you can technically make that distinction, Ted, but we're talking about government bribery here. You don't get to split hairs. We're already well past the point where I think you should be out of a job, as everyone in your fucking profession almost should be as well.
Just that subtle, I'm from here. What did he mean by this?
I think he just meant that he's got friends and family in the lobbying industry, I guess.
Yeah, but that could also be interpreted as, where are you from, Ted?
Maybe.
You wouldn't happen to be from there.
Maybe.
As a foreign lobby.
Because they're not.
They're not a foreign lobby.
No, they're not. And this is that there's a fever swamp. Look,
it's not a fever swamp. These are very reasonable questions, and you've accused me of being.
Honestly, Tucker, I think you need to let him answer, even if he lies. You get him on what he says, but you keep interrupting him while he's trying to clarify what AIPAC is and re-asking the same question, which I find quite annoying. Tucker's usually quite a good interviewer. This strategy, maybe you can get him to slip up and say something stupid, but if he doesn't, it's just going to piss him off. If what he has to say is actually informative, you're not going to get that information to your viewers. So I don't know. Maybe try this, but stop trying it eventually if he's not slipping up, and actually get the information out. Because what he says in earnest might be more interesting than what he might say in a slip up. Anyway, let's continue.
Obsessed with Israel, which I'm not.
I actually haven't. I've said
And being
isolationist
feverish
are.
about it, which I'm not at all. I find it's a very tender spot when you ask it, and I don't know why.
So, Tucker, all right, let's go back. I was first elected to the Senate in 2012. I came in Obama's second term. And I actually saw AIPAC be badly wounded in a way they never came.
Picture a farm in Ohio. Do you remember that, Quattro? Was that in the 2020 elections with that black guy? I can't remember what his name was. I think he was a Republican candidate. And when he was asked the question, he just said, picture a farm or something like that. It was something really stupid. It just seemed completely unrelated. I think he was just immediately laughed down. He didn't even get a chance to explain himself and what he was trying to say with that.
I think that was 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, Ted's asked a question. So Ted, why are you taking bribery from a lobbying group that is clearly working in the interests of a foreign country? Well, see, I joined the Senate in 2012, and back then it was, it was, et cetera, very, very silly.
Came back from. And the second term is when Obama did the Iran nuclear deal. And the Iran nuclear deal, I think, was catastrophic. And AIPAC went all in lobbying against it.
Yeah.
And they failed. And I was the leading opponent of the Iran nuclear deal.
Oh, I know. They definitely failed, yes.
They failed. And what happened, the Obama White House told every Democrat, when I got here, there used to be real bipartisan support for Israel. That has largely disappeared. And it's the Obama nuclear deal that caused it, because the Obama White House told every Democrat, pick. You either stand with Israel or you're a Democrat and you stand with the Obama White House. And almost every single Democrat member of Congress said, I'm a Democrat first, to hell with Israel. And then I watched as AIPAC, every one of those Democrats got reelected and AIPAC did nothing about it. And it dramatically reduced AIPAC's influence.
I agree. I watched it happen.
And by the way, I told AIPAC, I said, look, the analogy, if the NRA was supporting a bunch of politicians and cared about the Second Amendment, and you had politicians that vote to confiscate people's guns, and the NRA turned around and raised money for the people who voted to confiscate guns, you know what? No one would ever care what they said again.
So you're making the case that AIPAC is not as powerful as people say.
Didn't that actually happen at some point?
See, my follow-up question would be, so which AIPAC guy did you get assigned? I
really
just watched
probably
as he
did as
starts
well.
sweating buckets.
Hmm.
No, according to his own report just a few months back, oh yeah, every fucking politician has been assigned an AIPAC guy.
Mm.
And that's what they call them.
Yeah. Yeah, Wolf, you know when we did, some of us did political compass tests a little while ago? I don't know how seriously Ronald was answering his. I don't know if he was taking it sincerely. But he's quite deep into Red Square, dude. Like,
Oh no, I honestly answered mine.
there you go. So, and that's fine. All welcome here in Cabal, but that's not,
Well,
that's not what I believe.
the red square. It puts you in there if you have like, yeah, maybe we should have some controls on the economy, maybe.
Well, you weren't that far to the left in Red Square, but you were quite high up authoritarian.
Everyone was political compass is a shit test.
It is, but I don't think that result was particularly inaccurate.
Well, no, but besides the point.
So yeah, the sort of range of politics here in Cabal, I think if you look at the political compass of it, is fairly broad. But I think Ronald is a fairly significant outlier on it. But we can still get on because we still agree on a lot of things. But we disagree on quite a lot of things too, and that can lead to some good debate. Let's continue.
It is, and I completely agree with you. I've watched that, and I'm not making the case that AIPAC is all powerful and they're running everything and putting fluoride in the water. I'm not making that case at all because it's not true. I'm only trying to get to the question of what AIPAC is, and I don't think you're being straightforward about it. AIPAC is lobbying on behalf of the interests of a foreign country, and they're not registered. And you're saying, no, that's not true. You're saying that they don't coordinate with the Israeli government.
Of course, I coordinate. They talk with them. I don't know what they do. I can tell you. But
why don't you care? Isn't it meaningful if a foreign government...
Hey, I talk with Israel all the time. I talk with foreign countries all the time.
But the law is, and a lot of people have been prosecuted under this law, that if you are lobbying on behalf of foreign government, you must register. That's it. It's really simple. And I don't know why, if I'm working from Malaysia or Qatar or Belgium, and I'm working on behalf of its government's interests through a group of Americans who are representing the friendship between those two nations, I have to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And if I don't, I can go to jail. And people have gone to jail, including people I know. So I don't understand why we don't just be honest and say they're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. They're coordinating with the government. You know that that's true.
That is not only not true, that is false.
That was.
I'd like to point out the casual admissions. Oh yeah, I'm constantly in contact with Israel. Yeah, of course you are. You fucking golem.
Unfortunately, we have to say, yeah, a senator with international connections who views Israel as a worthy ally and views Mossad as useful for intelligence gathering would be in contact with Israel frequently, and other countries too. So again, a lot of the things, like a few things Ted has said here are dumb and sound really bad, but unfortunately, I don't think his position's completely untenable.
They're not coordinating with the Israeli government?
Do you know how AIPAC raises money?
What?
For elected officials, like what they do, like what the actual mechanics is?
Yeah, I mean, they go to people who are sympathetic to Israel and raise money and then send it to candidates who agree with them.
So what they'll do is, so in my last election, AIPAC endorsed me. And they'll host a fundraiser. And they'll host a fundraiser in Dallas or Houston or Atlanta or New York or LA. And they'll do a fundraiser and they'll get someone who will host it. And it's usually a business owner, lawyer, doctor, or someone who hosts it. And you get typically at an AIPAC fundraiser, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 people who live in that city.
Right.
Who care about a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. Yeah. And if they have, 50 people, each of them writes $1,000 check. And you raise $50,000.
Yeah, I've been to an AIPAC fundraiser. Okay. I know what it looks like.
But that is not. And by the way,
well, it's not just for you, Tucker. It's for the audience as well.
There's no representative of the Israeli government there. You have when you're in Dallas, you're meeting with
such a false and silly conversation. I know all this. The question is are AIPAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government to any extent?
Okay, that's
a really
different
simple
from
question.
lobbying on behalf of.
It really isn't, Ted. It really isn't. It's really the same thing. Again, I want to reiterate, none of this should be legal, in my humble opinion. It isn't here. And you might say, well, it still happens. Yeah, but much less. It's way less out in the open. You don't get politicians just outwardly, yeah, I'm lobbied by for these guys. Yeah, they endorsed me. They gave me a bunch of money. It's at least more subtle and harder to do, therefore. But it's crazy to me that this happens. But even then, the idea that it's not advocating on behalf of Israel, like even if this group is in contact with the Israeli government, you have to assume that their goals are aligned. Or if they're not, that's just part of the game. Because remember, they're not trying to deceive average Joe on the street who has a low IQ. They're trying to deceive politicians who sometimes have higher IQ than that. Not always. But their deception would be a little bit more advanced. It's enough to dupe you, Ted. It has to be enough to dupe you. So whatever you're perceiving...
I don't think it's a matter of deception more, hey, you play ball, you get funds.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, guess what? You don't.
I might be in the wrong by assuming slightly more good intentions from Ted here.
Look at what happened with Brandon Herrera. He would have won when he ran.
Mm.
However, AIPAC happened.
I don't know the story of that very well.
And their lobbying, he very narrowly lost.
Mm.
Because they pulled in all of their connections because they got so scared that there would be somebody else that wasn't one of their endorsed candidates And this happens on a regular basis, and a lot of usually on a smaller scale. But it was so blatantly obvious because he just said, "No, fuck off. I don't want foreign money." It's not complicated. And yet, they have to go out of their way with their scare tactics and their bribery in order to justify all this. Which is why guys like Ted Cruz shit themselves when they're asked about it and to fall over themselves while trying to justify all of this.
Maybe I just don't get that vibe from him. Maybe he is. But I think if you can find a way to explain something that doesn't require your opponent to be lying, it's usually the better place to start. Maybe he is. I don't know. I think some of them are, for sure, and some of them are blackmailed. I don't get that impression with Ted. I get the impression he's a true believer.
I've known politicians. This is what they're like.
Mm.
They're nowhere near as smart or personable as you might think. In fact, a lot of them are actually quite inept.
I know. I do perceive Ted as being a little better than that sort of rank and file. Yeah, let's continue.
Simple question. Are AIPAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government? And I'm just going to ask you a question straightforwardly. And if you say no, I think we both know that's not true.
Hey, are they shaped by? Is that?
Are they coordinating with the Israeli government?
Are they talking with them? Yes. Is Israel directing them? You want to talk about FARA? The law on lobbying on behalf of someone.
Yeah.
It is, I hire you and you lobby on behalf of me. I direct you. Does Israel direct AIPAC? No, they are not.
So, Ted, what if it's that, but slightly technically compliant? What if it's technically compliant with that rule, but basically the exact same as what that rule covers? Ted, if the law is just saying, if you formally declare that your relationship is one of hiree and hirer, then it's illegal. Then all they have to do is not formally declare it.
Mm-hmm.
Despite what I just said, Quattro, and generally I think that's true, Ted here is demonstrating either significant dishonesty or like immense blindness that he doesn't perceive this. Why, Ted, are you stating the law when you can tell from the way you've described it that the law is insufficient? It shouldn't just be
it's not technically illegal what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's ridiculous.
It probably should be, but you can't stop me, Goyim.
Ridiculous.
The politician will take the money, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Not lobbying on behalf of them. Or do they care about them? Yes, but
do you think that it's just interesting because what you're now describing in a very defensive way, I will say, is foreign influence over our politics?
No.
And you began, and it's so transparently obvious to everybody. I don't know why you would be embarrassed of it. You've said that you are sincerely for Israel. I believe you. I don't think you have some weird agenda. You seem to be sincere.
By the way, Tucker, it's a very weird thing. The obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
it's hardly an obsession.
You're not talking about Chinese. You're not talking about Japanese. You're not talking about...
Because you're not owned by them. Well, fucking you might be. Chinese, I wouldn't put it past any US politicians, but Israel seems to be the one that owns the most. They've got the most playing cards. Swallow well. Yeah. Yeah, like, Ted, if you want to talk about those countries, then be corrupted by them and we'll have a reason to. But for now, foreign policy is unable to be discussed because at home, our politicians are owned by foreign countries. I say our. Similar here, probably a little different, maybe not quite as bad. But in the US, it's this.
About the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, like I'm an anti-Semite now. Senator,
you're asking the questions, Tucker. You're asking, why are...
Tucker never mentioned the Jews specifically, I don't think. He just referred to Israel, so that's not good, Ted. Naughty Ted. Losing respect for you by the second.
Are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
That's what you just
I am
asked.
hardly saying that, and I have.
That is exactly what you just said.
Well, actually, I can.
It really isn't, Ted. And what Tucker's asking here, he's not asking it in the way I would ask it. He's being a bit belligerent, but they're reasonable questions. The IPAC, for whatever cope you can find to separate them from the Israeli government, they are a foreign influence operation. If they're run by Americans, it doesn't matter. It's about a foreign nation. It's about the connection between the US and foreign nation. And again, I want to make it very clear, it should all be illegal, all lobbying. But whatever, fucking, if it's going to be legal, at least have it recognized as what it is. Now, I'm not concerned about whether it's technically illegal. I'm not concerned even about whether it should broadly be illegal by a reasonable interpretation of the law rather than a technical one. I'm concerned about whether it's influencing US politicians too much. I think the answer is fucking obvious. That's the problem. Not whether they're Jews or not. Like, Ted has jumped to that way too quickly. And I have to say, it's any shred of will to defend him I have or had is evaporating now that he's implying the ad hominem, ad semitem defense.
Well, this
Speak for
happens
myself.
every single time they get any pushback about IPAC. It always ends up being, well, you're just an anti-Semite, aren't you?
Mm.
Every fucking time.
It's weird because these two generally like each other, and now Tucker is pushing him a bit on IPAC, and Ted's basically
Look,
accusing him of being a bigot.
the Israel problem tears families apart. You think it won't do this?
Mm.
I'm going to tell you what I am saying.
Good.
On behalf not simply of myself, but on of my many Jewish friends who would have the same questions, which is to what extent, and it's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are.
No, you didn't, but you wasn't hair's breadth from doing it. You implied that he had an obsession not with Israel, which already isn't true. The obsession is with politicians' obsessions with it. But you implied the obsession was with Jews specifically. Now, a lot of people, understandably, do have that obsession, or have that concern, shall we just say. I am mostly concerned with what the groups are doing. The genetics and ethnicity, I think, is too vague to be blamable. Though there are correlations for sure, but it's more the specific groups, the self-defined groups, Israel and such. But Tucker was specifically and only referring to Israel itself, the nation. And he wasn't referring to all those other nations you listed because they're not relevant in this way. Israel is unique in the power it has and the potential problem it poses. Yes, there's Ronald's compass. It's not crazy far into Red Square, but it's fairly deep into it. So yeah, Ronald is not particularly leftist, but little left of center. You're actually about as leftist as Ginger, but he's just in Green Square, I think.
And rather than be honorable enough to say it right to my face,
I'm
you are
sitting-
in a sleazy feline way implying it, or just asking questions about the Jews. I'm not asking questions about the Jews. There's nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has to do with the foreign government.
Isn't Israel controlling our foreign policy? That's not about the Jews.
You said
No, no, it's not. If he says isn't Britain controlling America's foreign policy, is it about whites? No. Is Russia controlling our foreign policy? Oh, you just hate Slavs. Is China a threat? You just hate Chinese. Well, the left actually did say that, but that's the left. I expect better from fucking Ted. Expect better from conservatives, at least. But he's only done that, as far as I know, Ted has only done that with Israel and with Jews. And yeah, again, as someone in chat said, Israel does not equal Jews. There are Jews who aren't in Israel. There are Jews who hate Israel. That's what I hear, for example.
Look, so you remember how I said earlier how women absorb their politics vaginally? Politicians absorb their politics through the dicks of their APAC guys.
Yeah.
Politicians absorb the politics of the asshole of the child they rip.
I'm glad that we're far past, for many years, the line of caring about YouTube censorship. Yeah, fair enough, Ronald. I think you may be more willing to embrace government power under the assumption that someone you like will be wielding it.
Well, yeah, that's the necessary precursor step.
Someone says Cruz is pulling the trick of intentionally conflating Jews and Israel, much like how BLM uses all black people as a shield for niggers. Yeah, it's disgusting. And I'm, as I said, rapidly losing the will to defend Ted here. He's not helping himself. So far, Tucker, I'm a little disappointed with the sort of belligerence, but he hasn't said anything wrong. Ted is really sinking himself here.
Said, I'm
I do have to
asking
step away for just a moment, but I'll be right back.
All right.
Just called me, I think, a sleazy feline. So let's be
it's
clear.
sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite, which you just did.
No, I just
When
said, why
I'm
is that the only
asking
question
you-
you're asking? You answer it.
Oh my God. Guys, come on. This is ridiculous.
Give me
Hold on.
another reason.
You-
If you're not an
you-
anti-Semite, give me another reason
I
why
will.
the obsession is Israel.
And there you've just said it again. Like, if you're not prove to me you're not an anti-Semite, so you by default believe he is. So there you go. Yeah, it's not just implied by saying, "Are you obsessed with the Jews?" He's basically saying, "Prove you're not an anti-Semite." Then, come on, this is not going well. This is not going well for Ted. Like, I still don't think that he is by default or by nature a dishonest person. I think he's forceful and convinced of his own mostly or largely untruths but he's just been driven slightly down a path and now he's too far down it to leave it. And so he's turning his reasonably apt intellect towards the goal of defending it when he shouldn't be. I don't think he's deliberately dishonest. I think he's just learned strategies to keep his worldview defended, but he believes it's consistent.
I am in no sense obsessed with Israel. We are on the brink of war with Iran. And so these are valid questions.
But you're not asking about Iran or
if
the
I can
Ayatollah.
finish, you asked me why I'm obsessed with Israel.
Yep.
3 minutes after telling me that when you first ran for Congress, you elucidated one of your main goals, which
Yes.
is to defend Israel.
Yes.
He said it was his main goal, or in similar words. So yeah, thank you, Tucker, for pointing that out. The rest of us noticed.
And I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel. I don't see a lawmaker's job as defending the interests of a foreign government, period.
Okay.
Any government, including the ones that my ancestors come from. So that's my position. That does not make me an anti-Semite. And shame on you for suggesting otherwise.
Yeah, fuck you, Ted. I'm kind of impressed with Tucker for having the courage to say that, because this might be his last interview with Ted Cruz. Jesus.
And I mean that. And that's low, and you know it's low. So why don't you just answer my questions
I'll
in a
answer any
straightforward,
question you'd
rational
like.
way? You certainly have the IQ to do it.
I think he does. I don't think he's an idiot. Grandma Tucker wagging his finger, shame on you. A little bit cringe, but also brave.
So-
Shame on you is cute, by the way, Tucker.
It is. It's not cute. I'm offended. I'm obsessed with the Jews. You just told me
You
that
just called me a
ran-
sleazy feline.
It is.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone there, but the way he was evading the APAC questions, I get why he said that. Honestly, Tucker, at this point, just ask him the next question. Stop with the bickering. Yeah, exactly, Spooner.
It is sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite for asking questions about how my government
Do you
is
want to
run.
count how many questions you asked about? What about the Jews? What about Israel? What about
I
APAC?
never asked about the Jews. I have. This has nothing to do with the Jews, whatever that means.
I mean, I'm glad this conversation's happening because it's opening up the dialogue on this topic way more than it already was. Bickering is destroying the Israeli narrative. The bickering is the point. I don't know if it is. Maybe. I mean, it's certainly being watched by more people because it's cringe. Maybe that's helping. It's not a good face. Not a good freeze for him, is it?
has to do with a foreign government. And once again, shame on you for conflating the two. They have nothing to do with each other. I'm talking about the influence of
Israel and
I mean, there's a pretty strong correlation, which Ted is about to imply is, you know, the argument that they have something to do with each other. Yeah, they have something to do with each other. Israel and Jews, pretty strongly correlated, excuse me, but not 100%. And Israel doesn't speak for all Jews. Not all Jews are in Israel. etc., etc. They're two Venn diagram circles, pretty big overlap, but not complete. So let's just think about what anti-Semite means when a political operator even insinuates that brand. It in a political context means a subhuman enemy who has no place in society. It basically does mean that. I think that's changing a bit. It needs to change more. I have the same position on the term anti-Semite as I do on the term racist or even fascist or Nazi. That these are terms that have a place, but they have been so blackened in the impression that you're supposed to have of people that have that label assigned to them, that it's better for them to just be completely destroyed at this point, for those terms to never be used, than for them to continue as they are now. Now, my ideal is that the terms are used for what they're useful for, but that's difficult because anytime you use it, people might interpret it as the full defamatory version of it. So I respect the people that say they just shouldn't be used at all. Well, if I ever do use them, I try to use them in a predefined way, in a way that I actually explain. But yeah, I think anyone using the term anti-Semite these days is under suspicion of having not necessarily paid for motivations, though if they're a politician, yeah, but motivations corrupted by a culture downstream of money in politics, at the very least.
And Jews have nothing to do with each other?
All Jews, or an attack on all Jews, which I am not, nor would I ever be undertaking now. I'm not attacking anybody.
By the way, that's who Iran wants to kill, is all the Jews and all the Americans.
And I'm totally opposed to that, okay?
Except you don't want to do anything about it.
Decisions need to be made.
We can talk about those decisions.
And I plan to.
Good.
But I just want to get a sense of whether you think, having described yourself as an America First person whose only criterion for judgment on foreign policy is America's national interest, to what extent you're influenced by a foreign government, which gives you a lot of money through its lobby, and you're claiming this has nothing to do with the foreign government. They're not coordinating. Yes, they're spying on us, but it doesn't bother you. And I'm sort of wondering, like, what is this? This is one of the weirdest conversations I've ever had.
I'll tell you what.
It probably is one of the weirdest conversations you've ever had. And that's saying a lot for Tucker as well. They have been the quick and easy go-to for winning arguments by shutting down other criticism. Of course, yeah. But I would hope that that's an era that we are going to leave soon. It seems like for most of them, it is ending. The thing is, if a tool becomes too useful without that being reflective of some true usefulness, then it will just wear down over time. It's rather like the 2008 stock market crash. It's a bubble. The terms racism, Nazi, fascist, anti-Semite, it's a bubble. And the burst is not immediate, but for many of them, the burst is in the process of happening. Because it's a fake size, a presence that is empty. And that's what they're doing. It's not truthful. If they were truthful, then the society would rearrange around it, gradually, probably, eventually. But they're not truthful. They're being overused. And actually, being concerned with race as a factor for determining political direction is not wrong. It's risky, definitely, but it's not wrong inherently. It's a data point that we should take into account. Be very careful with it because you don't want to make policy on something immutable and get it wrong. But yeah, it's a data point still.
I have returned from the far-off land of Absentia.
Welcome back, Quattro. I am, of course, only a DM call away.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, let's continue.
Hey, what? And I'll answer any question you like, but let's try to.
Are you going to call me an anti-Semite again or no?
Let's try to ratchet down the temperature a little.
You're the one who went to motive. I'm asking honest questions.
I'm
just asking questions. Yes, that's it. That is what I'm doing.
Let's try to ratchet down the temperature a little bit. And did you ever see an Eddie Murphy movie called The Distinguished Gentleman?
No.
They're sitting really close to each other. I mean, I guess it's so that they can hear each other, but it probably is increasing the temperature for them to be sitting that close. I quite like the setup they've got, though. They've clearly got two cameras filming all the time, and they've done the cuts in post. Usually, I feel like with interviews, they do the cuts live. So you end up getting someone starts talking, and then the camera cuts to them. But with this, it's cutting just before they start talking. And I think they have two very well separated mic feeds. So they never talk talk over the end of each other's sentences. I believe the interviewers have, if the ends of the sentences overlap slightly, I believe that they have deliberately separated them so that they never talk over each other. They do occasionally, but much less than in other interviews. Just a few little things they've done here, which I think are significantly nicer to listen to, but it's a bit less truthful.
Yeah. So it's a great movie. It's actually a fun comedy about politics. And Eddie Murphy in the movie is a con man who gets elected to Congress. And he's literally a con man who...
And I greatly identify with this character.
The congressman dies, he has the same name, and so he runs and they get elected. And there's a scene in the movie where Eddie Murphy is a freshman member of Congress, and he's sitting down with a sleazy lobbyist. And he's asking the lobbyist, all right, what should my positions be on, I think they were talking about power plants and electrical transmission lines. And the lobbyist's like, well, what do you believe? And Eddie Murphy, as the con man, said, I don't care. Whatever gets me the most money. I'll do whatever gets me the most money. And the lobbyist says, no. Pick a side. Doesn't matter what you pick. If you pick one side, we'll go shake down everyone who supports that side and they'll give you money. If you pick the other side, that's fine. We'll just go to the other side and shake down that. That's a little bit the way it works. And you often get leftists in the media who say, for example, if you support the Second Amendment, as you do and I do, well, you're just bought and paid for by the NRA. And that actually is backwards. I believe in the Second Amendment because I believe in the Constitution. Now, am I proud that the NRA supports me? Sure, because people who care about the Second Amendment want to support leaders who fight for it. But it gets it backward. Look, AIPAC, when I ran for the Senate, AIPAC didn't support me. I supported Israel before they supported me. I'm happy to have their support because they share my objective.
No, but you're missing it. I'm not suggesting that you're bought and paid for. I'm not saying that. I want to go back and take sincere.
I want to go back and take the transcript because you just
again. I do think his views are sincere.
If we go back, he basically admitted, yeah, they do shake down people for money. That this doesn't say what you think it does, Ted.
Again, I hate to defend him, but I don't think the point he was making is that, yeah, they'll just do evil things on your behalf. I think he was very badly making the point that they will find the politician that actually believes what they want to support and then go and support it. Now, I don't think that's true. I suspect that's true sometimes, but with the Israel lobby, there's too many Israel-loving politicians for me to believe that. And I think you, Ted, you might be more honest than the average politician, which is not saying much, but the average politician probably does actually just pretend to believe whatever they know or are told will get them the most money or will get them the most popularity or support. I mean, you did yourself, Ted, before Trump. Your campaign, it was painfully like basic conservative rhino shit. Painfully. And then Trump comes in, wipes the floor with everyone, and suddenly you're like, oh, finally, we don't have to pretend to be like that anymore. Maybe he wasn't pretending, but I got the impression he was. You're not as sovereign in your beliefs as you think you are, Ted. No human is. Whenever you've got people around you, you tend to align with them. Why is it that every US right-wing politician, with the exception of some of the MAGA politicians, are massively pro-Israel? Now, even if it's not that they're being paid out, that still requires explaining. Is it because it's a good idea? Well, then I've never heard them explain why it's a good idea. And even so, if it's a good idea, they go way too far with it. And why is it not a good idea equally to support other allies around the world to the extent that there are politicians who will just avidly defend them with no limit, who will call interviewers, essentially call them anti-Semites if they question the allegiance, etc., etc.
Said a minute ago, I'm slightly paraphrasing, but are you lobbying for a foreign government because they pay you a lot of money? That's basically what you said. So you are suggesting that.
Let me just be clear about what I think. Your views seem totally sincere.
Yes.
You take money from people who agree with you.
Yeah.
I believe that. I even
take money from people who disagree with me.
I'm only trying to get to the question of to what extent is the U.S. government influenced by other governments? And it's a lot.
Of course.
It's hardly just Israel. It's hardly just Israel. I don't think Israel's the main one. There are lots of governments. China is a massive influence on this city.
And it's a huge problem.
As you know.
I think Israel might be the main one. China probably either a close second or Israel a close second. But like they're obviously both huge problems, yes. But Israel's pretty high up there.
I couldn't agree more. And there are lots of other. The UK, which is a truly sinister place, in my opinion, as a ethnic Brit, I can say, I think that's my view. Maybe you disagree.
I think they're on the wrong path. I love
Whatever,
the Brits,
without even
but their government
without
is
even
gone
getting
off the
into that.
rails.
I'm just saying I don't think Israel's the only one, but it's the only one where you're instantly called an anti-Semite for asking questions, and it's also the only government that no one will ever criticize. And I
People
find
criticize Israel every minute of every day. Like the only government that people will not criticize.
Yeah, but they get memory hold for it. It doesn't happen with any other nation, just Israel.
Yeah.
And it's not Democrats doing it. It's not the free speech hating censorship party that are doing it. It's the other party. If you say you've come out against Africa, sure, the continent, they'll interpret it as blacks, then the Dems will try and memory hold, sure. But that's the Dems. We don't hold ourselves to that standard. Why are conservatives doing it with one little Middle Eastern shithole that happens to have really good subversive technology and powers? Oh, I mean intelligence agencies that we totally can trust.
But to go back on what he said earlier, you can call out China and Russia, no problem, or any other foreign entity. But the second you even insinuate that Israel could be behind something, even if it's relatively innocuous, oh, you're an anti-Semite.
That's true, Ronald, yes. Yeah, I think, though, we need to start popularizing the term anti-Anglite.
Perhaps.
Celtophobic. And we're not all Celts, though.
Well, the more funny labels that we can put on them, it's more that they have to contend with.
Well, obviously you think that, Ronald. I love how the sound of Ronald saying all the good Brits are Celts was followed just after the loud sounds of a bottle being consumed from. Saxon. That's pretty good, Scott. Oh, was it? Saxon. That's pretty good. Yes, Sick Puppy, of course. Anti-white racists against white people, of course. We do say that, Sick Puppy. But a specific term, because they mentioned UK, a specific term for anti-UK.
Rashida Tlaib just tweeted out calling Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal.
Rashida Tlaib? No,
you said no one will criticize.
No, I'm talking about Republicans that I would vote for, including you.
Yeah, we're not holding ourselves to the standards of people that are insane. Cruz, come on. Democrats, namely. Ronald has sent us a picture of his bottle. No, I'm willing to accept, Ronald, but that is quite a big glass.
Well, as doctors did say to try and limit it to one glass a day.
So he bought a glass the size of his torso.
Saying, whatever. I don't even like talking about Israel. What I care about, I never do, because it's not worth being called anti-Semites from AIPAC recipients. But
that's a good way of saying it, yeah. Specifically, AIPAC recipients are the ones that would do it. Yeah. So, okay, Ghost is making the argument that, Discord parry protects and proxies messages, which it reckons might get your account banned by Discord, and it probably catches like 99.9% of the cases. There have been a few exceptions, but honestly, they're baffling that they even got picked up by Discord, and they'd be very difficult to protect, right? So it tries its best, but in so doing, it tries it prefers to overcompensate than undercompensate, because I'd much rather that you get a few messages proxied that you didn't want to than that your Discord account gets banned, right? And I think hopefully you'd agree with me, chat, that you'd rather get a few too many messages proxied than get your Discord account banned. However, I removed power where it was just any word followed by power, and that would be filtered. You experienced that quite a few times, Quattro. We're talking about completely unrelated topics where power happened to come up, right? I think that was a bit too far, and realistically, the only word power that's ever going to offend anyone in the modern day, ever going to offend any Discord admins in the modern day, is the obvious one, right? So I changed it so it's just white power, that one. Should I do the same thing for T letter D? Because currently it gets anything which is T letter D, which means that anytime someone mentions Ted, it immediately protects that message. Now, I think it has to be just 3 letters. So actually putting an extra D on it would work. Harry's the most ardent chatter today, yeah. But but chat, let's have a little vote. Press 1 if I should. Actually, here's the thing. I could actually change it so it just ignores E. And maybe some other common ones. I mean, it's always going to be a vowel, right? If it's an actual word. Are there any other acronyms that have T something D that are worth excluding from this? Because it's just regex. I've just got to write the regex to exclude certain things. Todd, maybe.
Well, there's TRD, which is the Toyota Racing Division.
Not super likely to come up. Total retard death.
I mean, unless you're chatting in racism.
Yeah. So, okay, chat. Press 1 to leave it as it is, where it protects every 3-letter thing, which is T something D. Press 2 to try to exclude certain combinations. So exclude TED, but try and keep, by default, it does protect. And press 3 if it should only care about TND.
Honestly, I think this is much funnier.
Yeah, if you just put 2 Ds, it'll exclude. It won't try and catch it. Tad,
Well,
I didn't
not
think
only
of that.
but it'll also confuse our Ted more, which
True.
I can endorse. It's funny.
A percentage chance to do it. No, I'm not making Parry deliberately annoying. All right, I'm going to have to make a vote for this because you guys aren't actually voting clearly. Array of T underscore. Protect all such examples. Try to exclude some common safe examples, but default. And then only protect TND. There you go. There's the poll. Go ahead and vote, chat. Because the regex for including by default but excluding some specific examples is the least simple of these options for me to implement, so I probably won't be doing that one during the stream. The other 2 I could do during the stream. Option 3, just TND, KD, and TTD. Yes. Yes, I suppose I should have worded it like that. So option 3 officially now refers to those 3 specifically. TTD. I swear that's something else as well. Should Uzlu introduce Parry to RNGesus? Oh, right, RNG. And give Ted only a chance to... Well, that's something that would take me quite a while. Like, fixing the regex for option 2 requires me to get into the regex for like 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Just remember how I had what the best way to do that is. That idea requires like at least half an hour of work and a recompilation. So, no. Transport Tycoon Deluxe. I think that's what I was thinking of, yeah. Total tiger death. Racism. All right, let's see. It is almost a dead heat between people that want to leave it as it is and people who want to make it so it's only the obviously, the most obviously offensive ones. Quote unquote offensive. Well, I tell you what, it will be quite easy for me to change it now to only filter for the supposedly offensive ones. That's interesting. TND works even if it's not the full word, but T something at D has to be the full word. That's interesting. Okay, so all I'm going to do is change the dot to either N, T, or K. Save that, and then reload it. Parry's restarting, give it a minute. All right, it's up. You should be able to type Ted safely now, even with parry turned on. Total parry death. How dare you, Wolf? It's completely optional. You can just turn it off. Yes, you can now Ted safely. Congratulations. Thank you, Jada. One vote the second option, so the poll is pointless. Thanks, Matthias. Well, I've made the decision. I've done the same thing as I did with the power. We're only covering the ones that are known to be quote unquote offensive. Oh. All right, let's continue.
Now we're on the verge of joining a war, and I just want to be clear about why we're doing this.
All right, so, and let's get into Iran momentarily, but you suggested it was a strange thing that I said a minute ago, that when I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. And what you didn't ask is why. So let me tell you why.
No, you said I was obsessed with Israel, and you had just told me that like your driving motive to get to the Senate was to defend Israel. I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel.
Okay,
I don't even think about Israel.
Tucker, words matter.
Uh-huh.
And you know that. I said I resolved to be the leading defender of Israel, and you said your driving motive, the reason you're in the Senate.
You want to be the leading defender of Israel. I would think if I...
Yeah, like, Tucker is taking a little bit too far what Ted said here, but what Ted said is still pretty incriminating. It's still pretty bad. Like, I can understand if what Ted meant was one of my goals was to be the best at this thing. Okay, that's fair enough. But to mention it with such singularity, with such primacy, what were your other leading goals in being in the Senate? What else did you want to be the best at? Because I bet that was the only one that you'd thought, this is the thing I'm going to be the best at. And if it wasn't, it really still shouldn't have been up there. What are the priorities of the American people? Israel is, for some, unfortunately, quite high up, but I don't think it should be. And for people that have actually looked into it, it's not. And in terms of what they need, Israel is very low down that list. Quite, Ghost.
If I ran for Senate, I'd be like, there are people dying of drug ODs on the street.
My driving motive is to fight for Texas and America, and to fight for jobs, and to fight for the Constitution. And you played a very, very careful word game of a lie to you.
You're the one who said it, not me.
So you still haven't asked why, but I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian, growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible.
Christians are not, and you'll like this, Quattro, and chat, you're going to be baffled by this. Christians are not Jews.
Yes. Yes, that is very true.
No, just give it some time. It's so much worse.
I know, I've been spoiled for what he says, but I'll watch anyway.
Bible. Those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed.
Was that written by someone who was himself part of Israel? If that was in the Old Testament, I rest my fucking case. But even if it's in the New Testament, Israel was still the group, broadly speaking, around Jesus. Yes, quite a few of them were helped to get him killed or were involved in getting him killed. But they were still the group around him. They were still the group, many of which followed him. So it was still largely the in-group.
Well, you know what I can say with citation, synagogue of Satan is what the New Testament says.
Yeah, that's in there. So again, yeah, why take on because if he's quoting the Old Testament, I rest my fucking case straight away. That's not Christianity. It's builds up to Christianity, but Christ comes in later in the book. I don't know if you read that far, Ted. And he actually
I don't think
says,
he's ever read a Bible.
yeah, he actually says all that stuff from, well, you can interpret this however you like, but he actually says all that stuff from before, you can mostly ignore that, and Synagogue of Satan. Like, where's that in your assessment here, Ted? Where's that in your Christian perspective on this?
Oh, but you see, we're Judeo-Christians now.
I, as an atheist, I'd far rather befriend Christians than Judeo-Christians, let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, because it's just a fancy word for golem.
One could argue.
And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis, but so
Old Testament. That's the name for their fucking in-group. They're saying anyone who helps me will be blessed by God. That's the premise of a fucking God, you idiot. It's not, that part's not for you. That part's for the ancient fucking Israelites. The part for you is the bits that Jesus was saying. You idiot. Ted, you fucking idiot. How do I, as an atheist, know this? Spinner says it doesn't even say that in the King James. Okay. Someone says the biblical Israel is no longer the land of the ethnic Jews since the sacrifice. It is the church which was established by Christ as the kingdom of God on earth. Not sure I quite understand what you mean there. Not sure I'm supposed to. There were no Christians before Jesus. That's true. Use the Google. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he said that. I maybe miss it, but I don't think he said that. But yeah, someone says it means Cruz is completely full of shit. Again, I want to defend him in saying I think he believes it, but he's completely fucking wrong, and it's completely delusional.
So you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology. I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker,
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from?
A lot of the Christian debates I find to be kind of like baseless fandom debates. You know, when neither side actually has the correct answer. They're just throwing their preferences at each other. But this is pretty clear cut. This one's pretty clear cut. It's
Not
ridiculous.
only that, but it rules in the exact opposite direction.
Well, I mean, even if we assume that Ted's quote is accurate, it still doesn't make any sense to follow it. Unless you're a biblical literalist, in which case I don't want you in power. Someone says, we call what Cruz is saying deeply heretical. Understandable.
Yes, it is.
Is this bearing false witness on not just what someone else has done or said, but what the Bible says?
A few hundred years ago, this is the sort of thing that would have gotten you executed for heresy.
Well, so is what I believe, so I'm a little cautious on that, but he's claiming to be a Christian.
Yeah, funny that.
Someone says Cruz is weirdly supportive of things he doesn't understand.
Typical politician.
From number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
Hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And
What does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what? Hold on. Define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define.
It's just the same name, Ted. It's not the same entity. They called the landmass Israel because that's in the Bible. It's a diaspora that had long since separated from being specifically Israel.
So
I mean,
does this
yeah,
mean
there's-
if I call my car Israel, he is forced to then fund its maintenance?
Well, that's what we do, right? We define places that politicians are neglecting as Israel, and then they're forced to. I mean, there are towns in the US named Israel. Why doesn't he support those?
Good question.
In Israel, do you not know what Israel is?
I-
That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation
in
of
Genesis.
Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation with
Nation, for most of human history, has meant what today means, what today the word ethnicity usually refers to, i.e. the genetic heritage, the actual lineage of people. It does not mean state. I mean, it has become that, and arguably that's globo homo, changing that definition, but either way. If it's ethnicity of Israel, Ted, then it is about the Jews. But it's not for you, it's about the state of Israel, which is not the same thing as with being discussed in the Bible. It's also not what Jesus would want, except to the extent that Jesus was very kind and compassionate. But Israel are not people in need of that. Do you know what Israel are in need of, to put it in Jesus' terms? A whipping. What do you reckon, Quattro?
Which part of this? There's so many points here that can be argued against in his. I wouldn't even call it an argument. It's insanity.
It's interesting that I find the most to object with here once he actually starts talking about theology, because it's really bad theology. It's very, very bad.
Like, how do you reconcile these beliefs with just basic reality? Because again, by his definition, then I've renamed my car to Israel. He is now forced to fund its maintenance forever.
And if he means ethnicity, then he is talking about. If he means nation in the original sense, then he is talking about the Jews.
And therefore, he has to fund my bank account. And I haven't seen a single penny. All right, Ted, cough up the money. Where are you hiding it?
True.
Which bank account is it in?
True. Jew asking for bank account details. Tell us all this time.
Sorry, I need your bank account details right now.
They must redeem. Someone says half the Old Testament was chronicles of God punishing the Israelites for turning away from him. And then a VeggieTales clip, which I haven't seen. It mentions Canaanites, says Spooner. Who are the villains in the Bible? I think they were wiped out, weren't they? Jackie, just so you know, you can turn parry off. You are not being censored. Your messages are being protected. The spoiler masking thing is a very regrettable feature, quote unquote, of the system, because, as it says, the messages can't be blocked, and I want people to be able to filter their content on their side. So in order to make it blockable, I have enforced a bit of a terms of service. Not something I wanted to do, but it's the best way to solve it. But you can freely turn it off if you want to. And by the way, if anyone is not enjoying the fact that it's, hold on, which one is it? It's not that one. I have multiple bots that offer me the parry command. Yeah, so if anyone is not enjoying the fact that their messages are spoiler masked, the reason is that it's, as I said, unblockable messages, but there's a degree of trust at which I'm willing to trust that you won't abuse the fact that the messages can't be blocked. And that level of trust is either approved, level 2, or patron tier 4. Because if you're going to pay for it, you're not as likely to fuck with it. But those only nominally allow it. It can still be taken away if it's abused. So if you become patron tier 4, which I think is $15 a month, then you get unspoiler masked parry messages. So you will never be censored by Discord, or almost certainly never be censored by Discord, and your messages are visible to everyone. Let's continue.
Was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God?
descendant-
Oh no, Jackie, I didn't say you were abusing it. Just by default, it assumes that unless you have that level of trust, that you could be. So it takes the precautionary move of spoiler masking. You can still just click to view the message, but it's basically equivalent to everyone having you blocked, because otherwise no one can have you blocked. But no, Jackie, I don't think you were abusing it. If you were, then please don't. But I don't think you were.
Descendants of
Referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic
saying he's a
country that.
To be fair, yeah, he didn't say that he's a dictator, but Ted also didn't say that Tucker did. He was just doing it by the way. All right, people are mentioning, they're saying things about the VeggieTales thing. Let's watch this.
Do
Yeah,
we?
do.
Have I ever told you about the Israelites?
The Israelites. Oh yeah, I remember those guys. Weren't they supposed to be God's chosen people?
That's what the Bible says.
Oh, I bet they always followed God's directions.
Ho ho ho! You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Why do they sound Canadian? Or like some of those northern states with the crazy accents. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Yes, I am actually quite familiar with the Old Testament because I joined a Bible study group. Let's just put it that way. That's not accurate at all, but it's close enough. Someone in chat will I'm sure get what I mean by that. But no, I have not been talking to Plasma. No, not that. I was there occasionally, but I was there as the almost literally devil's advocate. And I would quite often have interesting debates there. But I try to avoid doing that because I felt like I was ruining it for them. Pulling back the veil. That Minnesota, that's what I meant. Plasma does not live on my walls, fortunately. Plasma has taken leave of this place for no particular reason. Infiltrated a Bible study group. Yes, Triple, that's the one. But yes, they do frequently stray from God in the Old Testament. But to be fair, the Old Testament covers literally thousands of years of history. Thousands. The New Testament is, what, like 30? Or maybe a bit more than that? It's not very much. But the Old Testament is thousands. So it was going to happen. And it was going to be those times which there was the most to write about regarding God, because it was those times that the Israelites came back to God for some great reason. It's the whole like peaks and troughs thing of society, the waveform of society I'm talking about. They were the troughs when, because religion's useful. It's not true in my opinion, but it's useful. So the troughs were where they weren't doing the useful thing. And then they started doing it again because they got whipped into shape by the patriarch or the whoever. And then they had a peak. And then they thought, this is so easy. We can just give up all the things that are difficult. Right back down again. And then they had to relearn it. And like, not every single one of those times was chronicled, but the interesting ones were. So it was likely they were going to mention that a lot more often. But yeah, they really did. They strayed from the word. And the interesting thing is, back then, gods were not generally regarded as the one universal god. They were regarded as this group has this god, this group has this god. And the general conception of some would have been that they all existed, but that one was just better than the others. Now, obviously, that would have been greatly variable, but it was much closer to that. Whereas today, religions are more totalizing. You believe in that there is only one. I'm not even talking about pantheons. I'm talking about literally competing religions where their gods all technically exist. Or each religion might try to rename them, but same idea. Tyler says the Gospels 3 years, Acts and the Epistles, depending on how you date them, 30 to 60 years. I wasn't far off then. The New Testament I'm less familiar with, but I'm more familiar with the Old Testament. In Exodus, the Hebrews were freed from Egypt, and within a month or so, they were turning away from God, while Moses was up on Mount Sinai receiving the Ten Commandments. Yes, that's the example I remember, where they were just being complete out. And it's not like they weren't worshipping anything. They were worshipping a golden fucking bull. And what's his name? Moses comes down from the mountain, and he's chipped some words on the stones. And hey, that's basically an idol. That's something material. And he probably like exclaimed it very strongly and just for some reason got them back into it. And remember, by the way, the entire Old Testament was written by someone, and those tellings may have been completely fucking biased. It may, and it's crossed through thousands of years of oral history before being written down and then retranslated several times. It's very possible that it's not a particularly accurate historical record. You know, shades of it. The general structure is true, but it's not just, I'm not just saying it's inaccurate. What I'm saying is it's probably written with significant bias from the perspective of the person that wrote it, which I find quite interesting. Genesis is quite vague. Yeah, well, it's mostly like parables, which is good. That's the thing. Is if you take stories, some of which may have actually happened, being based on something that actually happened, without the supernatural bits, of course, or they're made up, but they're good stories, and you take them and over thousands of years, you run it through the filter of not only are these the stories that we all want to retell, but also these are the parts of those stories that are memorable and important enough that we want to include them and continue to propagate them down the generations. What you end up with through that evolutionary process are some very refined parables. And that's what's largely in the Bible. That's why they're good lessons. It's because they accompanied people through thousands of years of reasonably successful societies being filtered and refined by every single person. This is why oral history is a good idea, by the way. It's very tempting to write it down. It's very tempting to have the Cabal Wiki, which I think is beneficial, but oral history has a lot of qualities that written history doesn't have. Religion doesn't get enough credit for basically inventing the act of recording history as we know it. Kind of. I mean, I think at that point what you're saying is, like, because religion was the only game in town, it's kind of like saying, you know, most scientists in the early days were religious. Yeah, because everyone was. You know, religion doesn't necessarily preclude science, but it also doesn't help either. You know, it can help. Religious institutions can help scientists, but the modes of thinking are completely separate from each other, inextricable, or rather, completely extrict from each other. They can't be combined. So they're completely separated. But yeah, giving religion credit is kind of like giving, I don't know, something that giving psychology credit for I don't know, like media entertainment or something, like, or something specific, like, or giving like the human brain credit. I mean, you can, yes, but it's kind of meaningless because everything is within that, or was at the time. There have been recordings that were not religious, but again, because in the past religion was so interwoven into everything that almost everything was religious. Hell, hieroglyphs means holy, like symbols. They were literally written for religious purposes. Or a lot of them were anyway. I don't know about all of them, but a lot of them were. So. Giving Freud credit for Chris Chan sleeping with his mum.
Oh no.
There's a connection there for sure. Funny how my comics are sometimes used to explain Cabal lore, especially the Marcosi ones. Yeah, no, the comics are really good. Honestly, best addition to Cabal's lore, probably ever. In terms of like,
not only that, but we get them more consistently than we ever did the Prevailer.
That's true. The Prevailer was quite good. I
accurate
also prefer the comics
of what has happened.
They kind of are, yeah. If Prevailer was pretty good, but I honestly prefer the comics. And with the new Ooze economy system, I intend to either have you paid naturally through the approval of your comics in Cabal Shrine, or maybe both, deliberately pay you more often for them. And other people too, who do interesting things. Cabal. But what I'm thinking of is that the credit given to people for the content they post, which gets a lot of approval in different channels, can vary based on what channel it's in. So stuff posted in Cabal Shrine can get more points for getting a lot of likes. Now, of course, that could be abused. I may have to approve that they're in the right channel before they get the points. But yeah, I don't see a problem with that. If it's a meme about Cabal, it gets more points. That's a pretty natural thing to do. Yeah, maybe so, Ronald. Maybe so. Someone says, remember that it's part of the official law that Marcusi is Uzlu's nephew, and he's looking after the lad after his father got carted off to wizard jail. Is it? But are you inventing lore to try to seed it into Cat's comics, Somnus? I mean, frankly, that's just another form of lore. Chat, I need to be right back quickly, but I'll leave you in the capable hands of Quattro and or the background music. Quattro, if you want to chat with chat, by all means do, but otherwise it's fine. I'll see you shortly, chat. Here. Don't go anywhere.
Well, chat. Looks like it's just me now. How will I be lynched today, I wonder?
Get back in your tunnel, you fucking kike.
Yeah, you don't own Ezreal, you fucking kike.
Never said I did.
Oy vey, another show, is it?
And to answer your question, Wolf, because it's funny. And that's what Cybersmith likes. Not that he's made that any secret. He's posted it in the server, and I regret that I have seen it. He pinged 8-Ball with that shit for some reason. Look, I haven't been hit with the kitten stick again yet. But knowing Matthias, he'll probably end up changing that once he gets tired of, 8-Bit Kitty. Oh no. I'm in danger. What the fuck is that, JDev? The fuck? Indeed, Ezreal. Indeed. By the way, I have a new channel that you should be able to access for posting any model kits that you build. Plastic Mecha Crack is what it's called.
There is also the workshop if you scroll down in the abyss of the server, which is for more general, other than just mecha.
Yeah. I went with the more specific approach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's your channel. If you want people to spam it with their fucking 40k models, it's up to you.
It's already happened. Too late for that.
You can limit it.
Look, I respect the crap, though. I respect it.
If someone posts a guardsman once, just ban them instantly. He's not on a mech.
What if they post Tau?
Well, if they're on a mech, I assume it's fine. I mean, I would kill them if they posted a Tau because they're filthy communist, vagina-headed blue bastards, but that's besides the point.
Not really looking for spam, John Wick Returns. that's what cesspool is for. I've heard there are a couple Somnus. I haven't really looked much into them. Thank you, Busak. Very cool.
Right, chat, I'm back.
Hello.
I have some news that some of you may find bad and some of you might find good. I'm not feeling too great. I've been going for almost 4 hours, so I don't feel too bad about saying this, but I've got that really strong indigestion that's making it difficult to talk, and as you can imagine, that's tough to stream with. So I think I will wrap it up here. As I said, we've been going 4 hours. We haven't got actually that far through. We got halfway through the Tucker interview. I'll try and continue it next time. But also I need to be awake in like 9.5 hours. So I think now is a good time to stop. We'll continue the, I just noticed the freeze frame is pretty funny. We'll continue this next time. I'll be away Saturday and part of Sunday. My ambition is to have, as I said, a UI for the Ooze economy on Sunday that you guys can use. It'll be simple. It'll probably just show the number 0. But it will be connected to the system that will actually be working. And then I'll start adding more features to it after that. But I'll try and stream the rest of this on Sunday or whenever I can. Oh, you see what I mean? Like that's just happening more and more often the more I go on.
Yeah, I would recommend trying some Alka-Seltzer. That might help.
Maybe. I think what I'm going to try instead is sleep.
It might be difficult to sleep with that.
No, it'll be all right once I'm not talking anymore. I'm also still having the issue with my PC's performance where when I move the mouse, it's just freezing up, which I don't know why that's happening, but it's rather annoying. But I think I'm getting closer to understanding the problem. That version I just posted should be a bit more high res, by the way. Thank you, Ghost. Sleep and chug water, says Spooner. I'll be completely fine if I just stop talking. That's what's doing it. I've had 3 indigestion tablets today. So that's not really helping. Yeah. No, I get this. Like I get really bad indigestion sometimes. Yeah, I'll be fine. What I'm thinking though, chat, is I'll end the stream here, but I won't go to bed just yet. In return for not continuing, because if not for this, and if not, frankly, for having to get up tomorrow, I'd be happy to go on for much longer. We could watch something together in Cabal after this. We could get together and do something. So those of you that are here in audience, hopefully you will come join us down in Pit 1, where we can all chat for a bit and decide what we're going to watch. In the Oozaflix channel, there is a selection of options available. So go and vote on the options in the Oozaflix channel by just upvoting them. And we'll choose according to who has put the most approval on them. Maybe a Top Gear or Grand Tour. Maybe we'd put on, I think Astronaut was doing Scooby-Doo. We could put one of those. So yeah, we will figure it out.
If he's around.
If he's around, yeah.
It looks like he's online, but he might be busy.
Let me just check. He is cavorting with Dai in their server. Oh well. Right, so yeah, I'll end it there, chat, on account of rain. And I'll continue hopefully on Sunday. So come join us in Cabal if you're not already, and if you are, come join us in Pit 1. Thank you for watching, everyone. And thank you for joining me, Quattro. And I'll see you all next time. Good night, everyone.